Good evening. I'd like to call the July 14th, 2015 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please start with the roll call?
Yes. Mayor Coombs?
Here.
Council members Bagley?
Here.
Christensen? Here. Finley? Here. Levison? Here. Moore? Here. Santos? Here. Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
All right. Tonight I'm going to have the Boy Scout Troop 66, which is the first Boy Scout troop in Longmont. And they're celebrating their 90th birthday, and they're going to lead us into a Pledge of Allegiance.
So we are Troop 66, and we are celebrating our 90th anniversary this summer. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those who have their names on the list will be able to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, but you have the opportunity to speak on any public hearing items tonight, and also at final call, public invited to be heard. So next we have the approval of the June 23rd minutes. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move approval of the minutes.
Second. All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions?
No, Mayor Coombs, there are not any.
Okay. City manager, is there a report from city manager?
Not a report for me, Mayor, Council, but I am going to introduce Valerie and some others from the Employee Recognition Committee to talk a little bit about what they're doing.
Okay, great.
Mayor Coombs, my name is Valerie Skitt, and I am part of the Employee Appreciation Team, and I'm joined by some other members. I'll introduce them. Of course, you know Sandy Cedar, Karen Friesner, Brandy Queen, and Sean Lewis. And we have a few that aren't here, but these represent quite a few of our Employee Appreciation Team members. We have a new program that we started this year, and we just want to let you know about it and know what's going on in our organization. We have a daily recognition program where employees can just recognize anybody they want to with a little thank you card and a little what we call tchotchkes, but they're little kind of fun things like bracelets that say you're awesome, and little cones that are stress balls and things like that. So they can do that any day. We have them spread out throughout the various buildings in the city. And then we have a more formal recognition program where employees can nominate others in the organization for 5 different categories of awards. And these are by quarter. So we have employees recognized as they see good things happening. Our 5 categories are, first is Unsung Hero Award, and that's an employee or a team who in the course of their everyday duties, as described in the job descriptions, excels in one or more areas of their job. They could be customer service, it could be responsiveness, task completion, quality of work, but it's within their own job description. Oftentimes people don't get recognized for just doing a darn good job, and so we feel they're unsung heroes. The second category is Beyond the Call Award, and that's an employer team who far surpasses what is required in their job description, or they perform additional work, or they are active on committees, or they save the city money, or they increase efficiency some way. So they're just nominated in any of those different areas for Beyond the Call. Then we have a Community Service Award where we recognize employees or teams who do a lot of work in the community outside of their job description. And we know that while we do a lot of community service as city employees, there are others that volunteer in the community as well. So we recognize them. The 4th category is called Living the Attributes. We have 13 attributes that we look for our employees to really live by in the organization. So I'll just give you a sample of some of those. It's treating each other with dignity and respect, embodying and modeling honesty and integrity, embodying a spirit of service, creating and promoting a work environment where people enjoy coming to work, holding yourself and others accountable. Those are just a sample of the 13 attributes that we have. Then we have our last category is a superhero award, which is an employee or a team of employees who live or perform, who save a life or perform an act of heroism that has a significant impact on one of our citizens or one or more of our citizens. And one of the things that counts, we also then have a quarterly award where the employee appreciation team reviews all the nominations from that quarter and picks one citywide winner in each of the categories. And then that employee also gets a small monetary reward for that. Tonight, we're here to make a presentation to one of our council members. And while council members are not necessarily, they aren't eligible for our quarterly awards, we are giving an honorary award tonight in the superhero category to Councilmember Brian Bagley. Brian Bagley was nominated. Brian Bagley was nominated for an event that happened at a local restaurant where he saw a citizen in distress and helped that citizen until emergency responders could be called and come and help that person. So we have this presentation. I'll read it to you, and then we would like to have your picture taken. So the certificate of recognition is proudly presented to Brian Bagley for your clear-headed assessment of a situation and quick action which resulted in potentially saving the life of a woman who was having a severe medical episode at a local restaurant, providing mouth-to-mouth breathing techniques in concert with actions taken by other patrons and personnel of the restaurant, demonstrated an incredible caring attitude and willingness to get involved to assist someone facing a potentially life-threatening situation. You are a City of Longmont superhero. So, Ms. Bagley?
I do my pictures.
Should mention to the Boy Scouts you were a Boy Scout.
That's true. That's true. You too could be embarrassed in public or something. You wait for me to stop blushing. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, now it's time for first call public invited to be heard. Are the sheets there? Jeffrey Justice.
Jeffrey Justice, 1503 Lamplighter.
Jeffrey Justice, 1503 Lamplighter Drive. Congratulations, Councilperson Bagley. You're my councilperson, and good going there. Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have two issues to address. One is the illegal fireworks problem. This year, the areas surrounding the 1400 block of Lamplighter, the 13 and 1400 block of Martin, and the 1400 block of Centennial in the area around the railroad tracks was transformed into a war zone once again and worse than ever. It begins the week before the 4th and continues the week after. Loud explosions and fiery rockets launched into the air with no concern about where these combustible devices land. These people who launch these fireworks are disrespectful to neighbors, the law, and endangered children, some of whom are the ones setting off these explosions. It is obvious the laws and penalties governing these illegal activities are not strong enough. These people don't care. The police are overwhelmed with calls, and they know it. I also witnessed a semi-automatic handgun being fired in close proximity to the Longmont Athletic Club 5 times. What accident or tragedy will it take before stronger penalties are in place and enforced? The second issue, the property manager of the strip mall at 9th and Kaufman cutting down the trees. One of the reasons given was to stop the homeless from urinating in that area. Really? there's a liquor store in that center that may be a contribution to this now very public problem. And they cut down the trees. They think that is an answer. How short-sighted and selfish. Was that even legal? The homeless are not going to go away. There needs to be better solutions than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Benker.
Good evening. My name is Karen Benker, address 1919 Andrew Alden Street. Tonight, I would like to talk to you about Northwest Rail. I suspect you've been reading about it in the newspaper the past couple of days. I think, as you know, 10 years ago, we passed the RTD tax. We've been paying the RTD tax now for 10 years. Longmont residents, taxpayers, have been paying over $35 million, and all the communities along the Northwest Rail corridor have been paying $233 million. Now, when I added up all these numbers, I did not include the city and county of Denver, even though they will also be benefiting from the build-out of the rail. You probably know it's 41 miles long, starts out at Denver Union Station, goes through Westminster, Broomfield, Louisville, Boulder, and terminates in Longmont. Critics say that this line can't be built, and I say they're wrong, and here's why. They say it costs too much and ridership is too low. So I'm going to give you a lot of numbers tonight. I tend to like numbers as a former budget director. Cost. First of all, it was projected to be $1.1 billion. About half that money would go to Burlington Northern for track improvements. The other half would be spent by RTD for other capital improvements. However, there's $140 million in there that RTD threw in that are for non-RTD rail stations, which actually we have one here in Longmont, which would be Twin Peaks. So that's one question I think that needs to be asked. Somebody needs to be looking into what is in the $1.1 billion. In addition, 6.2 miles are currently being built by RTD. So one of my other budget questions would be, is that amount deducted from the $1.1 billion? The other thing also is other rail corridors throughout the metro area, the costs are pretty darn similar. So it's either going to be a little bit less than $1 billion or a little bit more than $1 billion. So our line is not out of line. You also need to take a look at the revenue, the sales tax issues. The historic sales tax growth from 1980 to 2002 was 6.3%. When RTD went to a vote, it was around 5%. That's how they put together their model, thinking that they were going to have sufficient funds to build all of the rail corridors. Currently, the Dr. Cog accepted revenue increase for the next 25 years is 3.66%. Very low, very conservative. So my question then is, what happens when sales taxes come over the 3.66%? Where does the money go? Another important piece of information is RTD's operating side of the budget, not the capital construction, the operating side, is projecting a $1.1 billion surplus starting in the year 2020. Okay. Another question, what is RTD going to be doing with their operating surplus? So let's talk about ridership numbers. Northwest Rail has a projection of only 10,000 new riders in the year 2035. However, last year when they did the BRT studies and they came up with their 6 corridors, it was interesting to me that they had 18,000 new riders along US 287, another 5,000 along the diagonal. So my question would be, how can the numbers be so different between the BRT and the Northwest Rail line? Thank you.
Thank you. John Peck.
Hello, Joan Peck, 1935 Spruce Avenue, and I'm also speaking on Citizens for Finishing Fast Tracks. In 2004, RTD had a progressive vision for transportation within its district. They named it Fast Tracks. The original vision for the Fast Tracks build-out, including the Northwest Corridor, was 2017. Well, that timeline won't be reached. Our grassroots organization wants RTD to keep its promise to the voters. To that objective, we have outlined 4 action items for RTD to address. The first one, establish the Northwest Corridor Fund that will set aside funds to begin the construction of this rail project that will continue from 71st in Lowell and end in Longmont. Second, earmark all sales tax revenues that come in over annual budget projections and other funds saved from building other rail corridors, federal funds that supplant local funds, and other surplus funds to the Northwest Rail Corridor Fund. In other words, make the Northwest Rail Corridor priority in funding. And the third thing is no other rail or line extensions, BRT, trolley, or other major RTD construction projects be built before the full funding of the Northwest Corridor. Number 4, immediately begin to purchase the right-of-way, start preliminary engineering, and build out the rail line in segments to uphold the trust of taxpayers in the Northwest metro area. The comments from our website, Citizens for Finishing Fast Tracks, that people who signed the petition, those comments are going directly to RTD's general manager. Karen and I will follow up those comments by addressing the RTD board and the general manager, David Genova, with our action items listed above. Now that we've stated our mission, we would like the mayor to ask the mayor and city council for the following action items from you. RTD was supposed to give Phil Greenwald a design for Longmont's transit station by June 1st of this year. Has that happened? We would like that design to include a rail station as well as the bus depot. Mayor Coombs, as our stakeholder, we would like you to form a coalition of the Boulder County mayors, our RTD director, Judy Lubau, and the RTD general manager, David Genova, to discuss and push the Northwest Rail Corridor. We'd also like the coalition to think big and discuss the possibility of following the BNSF rail line all the way to Highway 66 with transit stations along that route. This thought process might allow Fort Collins and Loveland to hook up with the line. Also, we have to think about the build-out of Longmont. We should have that rail line going through our city. That should be a vision that we search for. Please go to citizensforfinishingfasttracks.com, sign our petition, and post your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mawien Arc, probably butchering, but it's Mawien. Yes.
Yeah, Mayor Combs, council members, my friend Sarah, I've known her for years. I have been appealing. I've been appealing because I'm a human being. I believe in God. This is not enough. We've got to do some more. I've been humble, patient, waiting, whatever that is. We've got to do some more as people, as humans. As long as we can speak. You can hear me, I can hear you. I believe in God. And if there's God, then we need to do something about it. As is speaking humans. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there isn't anybody else that signed up for first call public invited to be heard? So Valerie, do you want to introduce the first item?
Yes, the first item is ordinance 2015-31, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for the expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2015. And we do not have a formal staff presentation on this item.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 2015-31. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this ordinance? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2015-31.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Your next, your next item is ordinance 2015-32, a bill for an ordinance amending chapters 15.04, 15.06, and 15.10 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding the principal uses, use standards, accessory uses, temporary uses, sign standards, and definitions. And Brian Schumacher, our senior planner, is here to make a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Brian Schumacher of Planning and Development Services. I'll try to be brief. So I have a little bit of a mixed bag before you in terms of amendments. Just to give you a little bit of background with the update that we're undertaking right now with the comp plan and the St. Vrain blueprint, staff is holding off on bringing forward more substantive updates to the development code until those processes have been completed and we have and consider the implementation recommendations from those processes. However, with that in the works, several amendments have been identified to address in the near term. A few of those, such as the revisions to the live-work dwellings to conform with building code standards and adding the definitions for porch and screen porch to be consistent with the interpretations and existing policy, are more housekeeping matters that staff has identified. A few of the others are more substantive and are based on input received from other parties as well as businesses in the community. And I'm just going to briefly summarize those. The first is to add a new use category for skilled nursing and rehabilitation facilities that provide short-term rehabilitation, residential care. The medical-related facilities use categories in the Land Development Code, those haven't been updated for a while, and with changes how patients are being cared for and the growing desire for people to age in place in their existing homes, we're looking at opportunities to address those gaps in our zoning code. This particular use category for short-term rehabilitation facilities is proposed as a gap and a bridge between hospitals and medical clinics and in-home health care and long-term group care institutions or nursing homes. So this use category is proposed to be allowed in several zoning districts, including the medical overlay district, the mixed industrial district, the commercial district, and the business light industrial zoning district. And this amendment is based on input that staff has received from parties interested in developing rehabilitation facilities in Longmont. The second item I wanted to mention is to revise the home occupation standards to allow one outside employee to work with residents conducting a home occupation, provided the home occupation would not create negative impacts to the surrounding residential uses. And this proposed revision is based on input from Startup Longmont to create opportunities for and encourage small startup businesses in the community, particularly with the rollout of the NextLight broadband in Longmont. Third item I wanted to mention is regarding temporary use standards, and this would revise the retail mobile food vending standards to allow for an exception to the distance separation requirement from restaurants if a mobile food vendor obtains written permission from all the surrounding restaurants that are within that distance requirement and gets an affirmative from all of those restaurants. This proposed revision is based on input from the mobile food vendors. And finally, the fourth item is regarding electronic message signs. You've probably seen some of those around the community with respect to not only on some of the school district properties, but other businesses in town. The school district properties are exempt from our standards because they're regulated through the state, so they don't have to meet our standards. Our current standard regarding electronic message signs is that messages can only be changed once per day. And given advances in technology with electronic message signs, businesses are interested in being able to advertise more frequently their messages on those electronic signs. And staff has received input and requests from a number of businesses throughout the community that are interested in being able to advertise their information on their message boards more frequently than once per day. So you've probably been around not only the Front Range, but other areas in the United States, and you can tell that different communities treat electronic message boards varyingly. And I think the goal with respect to the amendments is to find a balance between the interests of the businesses to be able to advertise more frequently and the community goals related to public safety and sign aesthetics. So with that, we tried to draft these regulations to kind of address those particular issues. The amendments update the sign lighting standards to distinguish between daytime and nighttime lighting requirements, and they also require an automatic dimming capability for electronic message signs, so you're not getting overexposure in the evening hours with respect to the brightness of the signs. And then they also include standards regarding the frequency of electronic message change and how the message may change. There's a few other amendments with respect to definitions that are being added in. As I mentioned before, we're adding new definitions for electronic message signs, as well as the definition for the new use category for skilled nursing and rehabilitation facilities, as well as adding a definition for porch and screen porch. So with that, I'm going to close my remarks and be happy to respond to any questions council may have. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. My only question for legal, on page 31, looking at the industrial specific use standards. You there? Okay, my only question is, where'd it go? I guess my question was simply, why were professional offices and medical and dental offices removed? And is the term including, is that including all inclusive? So is it including but not limited to, or only including these types of facilities? And I would have approached you earlier before tonight, but I literally, that including just jumped out at me, so I apologize, Mr. May.
Professional? Sure. We looked at this, we had this discussion with council several years ago with respect to a modification for a retail establishment that wanted to locate in the business light industrial zoning district. And there was some discussion with council at that time about what types of support uses in the industrial zoning districts we wanted to allow and to what extent, how much we wanted to allow them. And at that time, this was the list that was established of those types of support uses in the industrial zoning districts. That would be the mixed industrial district as well as the business light industrial districts in particular. And after looking at that, we felt that the professional types of offices, whether that's medical dental offices or professional offices, whether that's accountants or lawyers or whatever, weren't really similar to this other grouping of uses in this list. And we felt that those types of professional offices would be appropriate in the industrial zoning district, business light industrial zoning district in particular, without limitation. We didn't necessarily want to limit those types of professional use categories in the industrial zoning districts, whereas these other support types of uses And based on our previous conversations, we felt that those should still be limited to the 25% limit in those particular.
Okay, so it's just they are not limited.
Right.
Okay, so we could have doctors and lawyers all over the
Everywhere.
industrial zone. Okay, and then the other question was, is it only those? If there's is the including, you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Okay. As a lawyer, I'm reaching out to you. Help me here.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So I would interpret the parenthetical including as being examples of consumer goods and service uses and other support uses, not an exclusive list, but by example, these are the types of things we're talking about.
Do you feel that we should make that more clear or no?
I don't think so.
I'm good with that, Mr. May. Thanks.
Councilmember Christensen. I have a question about the signs. I personally find electronic signs that flash and do things to be incredibly tacky myself. But how is it ever consistent with public safety when people are driving to have messages flashing at them that change? I mean, I don't understand how this, I know there's it has to fade out and fade in, but this is all very distracting when you're driving. And we already have plenty of distracted drivers. So are there any studies on the safety of this?
Mayor, Councilmember Christensen, there have been studies regarding that. I know the federal government has looked at that, and other state governments have looked at that as well with respect to kind of your ability to recognize messages on electronic message boards and the frequency that they change. I know a lot of recommendations that I've seen in terms of the minimum change, the recommendation I've seen is 8 seconds. Some communities ignore that and they allow the flashing signs, which I agree is very distracting to drivers, and it's just creates a kind of a negative image for the community as well. So I know currently our standard is once per day. We discussed this and settled on allowing signs to be changed every 60 seconds. We feel with that, it's reasonable, allows a business to change their message, but doesn't create a distraction for motorists. And it's not a flashing change necessarily. It's more of a gradual, I mean, not necessarily a gradual change, but fades in, comes back in. So
It's preferable to flashing.
Right. I know. I mean, when I drive.
When you drive down the highway to Denver, you see all these ludicrous. Tigers are jumping out at you and things like that. That's not what we were going to do in Longmont anyway. But I do appreciate you trying to find a middle ground. Yeah.
Councilmember Levinson. Thank you. I'm looking at page 5 in the section with the sign ordinance, and I guess I'm reading through it again and don't know if it makes sense. It's line 29 and 30. It's page 35 of the packet and 5 on the ordinance. It says exposed neon and LED lighting on any portion of a building or structure except within the lettering or logo on a freestanding wall sign. Okay, it's wall sign. So what would it look like if every business on Main Street decided to have LED lighting on with as part of their lettering or logo on their wall signs? I mean, have we tested to see if everybody took advantage of this and every storefront on Main Street had one of those rolling signs? And I mean, what would town look like? Have we done any templates?
Look at the pump house sign. That's an LED sign.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering what Main Street would look like if every single if everybody decided to go this way.
Mayor, Councilmember Levison, I don't anticipate that happening. I guess potentially it could. I know that electronic message signs are pretty expensive, and a lot of businesses don't want to invest that much in electronic sign. I know this particular item references freestanding and wall signs. You'll note, though, that in the table that the electronic message changes would be allowed, at least initially, just on freestanding signs. So we're trying to not have them on wall signs as well, and just at least initially test them out and see how it works on the freestanding signs to see if we have any issues or problems. We can certainly, if it gets to be a concern by council, we can certainly bring this back for consideration in the future.
And then there was a restriction on page 6 about scenic entryway overlay district. And I know that downtown is our downtown development authority is looking to do a historic district. So would any of this prevent or diminish the seeking of historic district status for our downtown to have this kind of lighting ordinance?
Mayor and Councilmember Levison, as you may recall, 2014, the council adopted, with the recommendation of the LDDA board, some specific downtown design standards. And so those are currently in place and being implemented. That would pretty much, those particular standards would preclude the use of electronic message boards within the downtown area, under the jurisdiction of the DDA, because those have to go through a design criteria review. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be doing anything by taking action tonight that would diminish the capability of the DDA for exploring national district status by and then having business owners in conflict when they wanted to exercise their rights for different types of signs under these ordinance changes.
Right. So I don't believe that would have any impact on the process that we're going through to nominate the downtown for a National Register District.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open up a public hearing on this item. Is there anybody from the public that'd like to speak at this time on ordinance 2015-32? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would move passage of ordinance 2015-32.
Second. Thank you. Been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is ordinance 2015-33, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Van Spram Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H14A to High Country Aviation LLC. We do not have a formal staff presentation on this item.
Okay, I don't see any questions from council, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 2015-33. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2015-33.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is ordinance 2015-34, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as Van Spram Municipal Airport Hangar Parcel H33C to Anderson Aviation LLC. And again, we do not have a formal staff presentation.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 2015-34. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2015-34. Councilmember Levison.
Mayor, I'd like to move ordinance 2015-34 for adoption.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Just a second. Your next item is ordinance 2015-35, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the city of Longmont to lease the real property known as the Petrox property to Sype Farms LLC. Again, no formal staff presentation.
Okay, so I don't see any questions from council. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on ordinance 02515-35. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2015-35. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Move ordinance 2015-35.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Your next item is public hearing on housing and community development needs and approval of the 2016 budget for Community and Development Block Grant and the Affordable Housing Fund. Kathy Fedler will make a presentation on this item.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kathy Fedler, Housing Community Investment Manager. Tonight, we're here to hold the required public hearing on the proposed budget for the 2016 Community Development Block Grant Program and the Affordable Housing Fund. Just as a reminder, there will not be funding requests available under the HOME program this year because of our new regional allocation system that the consortium adopted starting in 2015. And if you remember, Longmont received the first full allocation of HOME funding in 2015, and so our next funding opportunity will be in 2019 unless one of the other communities can't spend their funding, which probably isn't likely. The Housing and Human Services Advisory Board met in a joint meeting with the Technical Review Group to discuss the housing and community development needs of the community. What was presented to them was the information that Council received as part of the May 12th update to Council on the affordable housing needs in Longmont. It was the mutual decision of the two groups as they looked at the data that the city should concentrate its federal and local funds as much as possible on addressing those housing needs. The two advisory boards felt it was important to provide as much funding as possible to support affordable housing projects because of the critical need that we're facing for rental housing affordable to households at or below 50% of the area median income as described in the Workforce Housing Task Force recommendations. Excuse me. The following proposed budget, which was also shown an attachment to in your packet, is planned for no reduction to our 2015 CDBG grant. So we are not anticipating a reduction to that. While budgets are usually estimated at a reduced rate, for the past several years, we haven't, in fact, received a reduction. We've received either flat funding or slight increases. So we will, as we get through this process and come back to you with the formal project funding recommendations, we should know more about what our funding will be, and at that time, we'll make some recommendations about adjustments, either up or down, based on that this fall. So, and I wanted to point out, too, that the proposed budget reallocates $125,000 from the 2015 CDBG program. If you remember, that funding was set aside to offset any defaults under the microloan program that was approved for the flood recovery program to dovetail with that. And it was put in place until we could work out exactly what funding was needed and approve that from the Affordable Housing Fund, which we did at the March 17th, 2015 meeting, so that $125,000 from the CDBG program can be released and reallocated. So that is included in the 2016 budget process. This proposed budget does not recapitalize the neighborhood revitalization program, since work in the Midtown area, which was our last neighborhood revitalization area, will be completed with the remaining work we're undertaking right now in the Lanyon and Spangler Parks. And it does not recapitalize the small business loan program. This program, if you remember, is at or close to $1 million investment between the CDBG funding we've put in over the years and the matching Colorado Enterprise Fund funding that they put in, and is right now expected to generate enough program income through the loan payments to keep the fund operational. And further back in your packet, it did show that we do anticipate there's about $120,000 in existing grant funds from previous years available for that program. We anticipate spending probably $60,000 of that in 2015, and then that would leave another $60,000 available in 2016. So it's not like we're cutting the program off hard and fast. There is still funding that's available for that. So with the proposed budget, about $200,000 would go for our ongoing housing rehab programs, $50,000 for the ongoing housing counseling program, which is a requirement for many of the home rehab and down payment assistance programs, as well as a lot of the flood recovery programs. It would make $460,000 total available for competitive housing applications, $335,600 from CDBG funds and $125,000 from the Affordable Housing Fund, and then the rest would be for ongoing administration required to operate the programs. And then finally, I just did want to point out the next steps. So if this budget is approved, we'll go ahead and put out the applications, hopefully by the end of this week. We would have them due back in about, I think it's about 5 to 6 weeks. I think it's 5 weeks, or August 21st. The technical review group would then review the housing applications during that next 2-week period and line everything up to come back to the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board regular meeting on September 10th. We would then bring back their recommendations to council at the September 29th meeting, and then open up a 30-day public comment period in October and get final council approval at the end of October, and then be ready to submit to HUD shortly after that, or as soon as we're allowed to submit that. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you want to open the public hearing as well.
Any questions? All right. Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Will this budget in any way impact our discussion about where affordable housing funds for last week's discussion will come from? Will this put us off for a year or anything like that?
No.
Nothing to do with that, right?
Mayor Coombs and Councilmember Bagley, it actually dovetails, I think, in with the recommendations that were made. One of the recommendations, if you remember, or options of looking at how to fund affordable housing was to dedicate 100% of the CDBG funds to housing for a period of time. So this is one of those recommendations. Council didn't really give us any consensus direction on that. The advisory board is recommending, at least for this year, to dedicate all the funds to affordable housing to help meet that critical need. Next year it could look, different depending on what next year looks like. But for this year, they felt strongly that we should be setting aside funds for that.
Just wanted that on the record. Thanks.
Councilmember Robinson?
Yes, Kathy, I do agree that we've got some critical housing needs here and need to devote the CDBG budget to it. However, I do want council to remember that actual job creation at a higher than minimum wage level was accomplished when we helped small businesses with CDBG money to add equipment, and they hired more people at much above minimum wage. And part of what we need to do is always pay attention to job creation to help people that may not have a lot of job skills to get their foot in the door for an entry-level job, and then be able to keep with that job. It's not just housing. Sometimes it's having a job at a company that's stable and able to expand, and then being able to move up in the ranks. So I hope council will remember in future years that there have been some very significant wins in our community for job creation with CDBG money.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on the housing and community development needs. So everybody from the public would like to speak on this at this time? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move that we approve recommendations of the Housing and Human Services Advisory Board.
All right, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Thank you. And one little point, I just want to let you guys know that a couple of meetings ago, you had appointed Tom Trujillo from the Housing Advisory Board to serve on the TRG. And after that appointment, he didn't feel he could fulfill that, so the Housing Advisory Board selected Kim Shaparik, I think that's how you pronounce her name, from the Housing Advisory Board to serve on the TRG. So I just wanted to let you know, since that didn't come back to you formally.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is the consent agenda. Item 9A is ordinance 2015-36, a bill for an ordinance amending section 2.96.020 of the Longmont Municipal Code on the powers and duties of the Board of Environmental Affairs. Your agenda shows the public hearing and second reading is July 28th, but we have been asked to move that to August 4th so that it coincides with another agenda item coming forward at that time. Item 9B is ordinance 2015-37, a bill for an ordinance approving the land use amendment to the Longmont Area Comprehensive Plan for the Sienna Park neighborhood, generally located south of Kansas Avenue and west of Sherman Street. Again, your agenda shows that the public hearing is August 4th on this one, and we've been asked to move that to August 18th, just to accommodate some staffing issues on that. Item 9C is Resolution 2015-44, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County for financing the construction of a pedestrian underpass at State Highway 119 and Hover Street. Item 9D is resolutions 2015-45 and 46. 45 is a resolution approving the amendment to the IGA between the city and the state of Colorado for a community development grant disaster recovery housing grant agreement for down payment and temporary rental assistance. And resolution 46 approves the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and state of Colorado for a community development block grant disaster recovery housing grant agreement for house repairs. Item 9E is Resolution 2015-47, supporting the 6 principles of Next Century Cities and further supporting the city of Longmont joining Next Century Cities. Item 9F is Resolution 2015-48, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and City of Boulder and Boulder County for a grant to reduce domestic violence. Item 9G is approval of 2 capital improvement program amendments, PB 109, which is Municipal Facilities Parking Lot Rehab, and T113 Main Street Bridge over St. Vrain River. Item 9H is to allocate $15,000 from the 2015 General Fund contingency to participate in the Consortium of Cities Permanent Supported Housing Study. And staff does not need to pull any of these items at this time.
Councilmember Santos.
Yes, Mayor Coombs, I'd like to pull A and H.
Councilmember Levison.
I would like to pull item B, Mayor.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd like to move the consent agenda minus A, H, and B.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
And
Councilmembers.
the first item pulled was ordinance 2015-36, which is the powers and duties of the Board of Environmental Affairs.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I've had a conversation with the city manager. I'm still trying to figure out what we're trying to do with this ordinance. It's been suggested incorrectly several times that the Board of Environmental Affairs was unable to do anything with the with its current ordinance. Having consulted with city manager, who consulted with other members of staff, apparently it wasn't due to the ordinance; it was due to lack of attendance by board members of the BEA. I still feel that this ordinance, giving this other powers to the BEA and I'm still trying to figure out how this would work, so I'm going to have to ask the city attorney. this now be, if this were to pass at second reading, this would allow the BEA to pull items off other board and commission agenda items. Is that correct?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney, once again. I'm not sure if we've thought through the process. I don't think they would necessarily pull things off other boards' agendas. I think that a referral process is probably more appropriate, or a collaborative process amongst the boards to identify overlapping issues between multiple boards.
Don't we do that already with boards and commissions? I've seen things go to TAB that have been to Parks and Transportation Advisory Board. I'm trying not to use acronyms since there's people in here who haven't been here before. The Transportation Advisory Board and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, the Water Board, they've all. Why does it need to be spelled out? I'm trying to understand why it needs to be spelled out. I guess I'll have to ask the members of council that question. But the way it reads to me is that they would be able to pull items off of the other boards and commissions agendas. And would that include planning and zoning?
So I read the proposed amendment as removing the restriction. I don't think it gives them any affirmative authority to do anything that the other boards do already.
I'm still unclear on whether or not they can pull things off of other. It's been suggested at council at our study session that they would be able to pull things off of other boards and commissions agendas.
I think that part of the rationale for the proposed changes is to bring it in alignment with other boards. I am unaware of other boards pulling things off of other boards' agendas. Okay. If that happens here, I'm sure council could take action to correct that.
Okay, thank you. So, and again, erroneously, it's been stated at this dais that the Board of Environmental Affairs has been able to do nothing with the ordinance that was adopted in 2010. Which, if I'm reading correctly, the powers and duties, and looking at page 145, to identify topics related to environmental quality and sustainability, such as air and water quality, pollution prevention, solid waste disposal, recycling, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and green building, and to advise the City Council on plans, policies, and actions related to those topics. So I'm still clueless of why the change. And again, having talked to the city manager who talked to Dale and has also talked to Cal, it wasn't that this ordinance was blocking BEA from having their meetings, it was lack of attendance.
Councilmember Christensen.
Having participated in some of those things, I agree that the lack of attendance was and hopefully that will be gotten rid of. But that is a huge problem. However, there was never any idea that they would pull anything. It was just to bring this board into alignment with what other boards do. For instance, the senior center, the senior advisory board discusses transportation issues because they're very important. They don't, and sometimes they go over to the transportation board, I believe, and at least observe. I don't. Anyway, those things overlap, and people need to have the leeway to do that. Nobody is suggesting that anybody should be duplicating each other's efforts. This is intended to provide collaboration and also just to free people. Originally, the Board of Environmental Affairs, apparently, as Mr. May told me this morning, was created to oversee ozone regulations. And so the whole thing has changed over time. And of course, the definition of what they're studying needs to change, or just to be broadened so that it doesn't restrict them to studying only what they're told to do by council, which is what the current ordinance does, unlike any other board in the city. So it's just to bring it into alignment with what other boards do and how they're treated. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess I'm going to be voting for this, and I guess the reason is because My philosophy and ideology is that, every week in my company, we have a meeting. There's an attorney assigned a case, and the whole point of the meeting is to solicit feedback, encourage dialogue, debate, get different perspectives. What are we missing? And so I kind of look at that, or I kind of look at this 9B, Ordinance 2015-37. I'm sorry. What were we at?
9A.
9A, sorry. 2015-36 is something similar. I think for whatever reason, the Board of Environmental Affairs needs a jump start. They have not been attending. And of course, I don't know the answer, but my gut tells me it's for a few reasons. First of all, I think that there is evidence that there's been confusion as to what they are allowed to address. In speaking with staff and fellow council members and liaisons, the impression in talking with the board members is that they were under the impression that they could not address certain topics that they needed to address. Now, right or wrong, whether or not they were right or wrong, that impression was given. And I think that that this removes that confusion in such a way that says, we want your feedback. City Council has the ultimate vote. They're an advisory board. If they bring back a suggestion that we don't like or future councils don't like, no matter how mad they are, if we don't want to do it, we just have to say, I'm sorry, we're not going to accept your or follow your recommendation. And as far as the idea, again, of being able to address other issues before other boards, I view the Board of Environmental Affairs as just a natural way to, I think that what they do and their scope overlaps naturally with a lot of issues. Water, transportation, yeah, maybe even some building projects here in town. Who knows? And right now, the board has been silent and idle. And I think that by telling them, hey, if you want to address an issue, bring it before council, I don't see any harm in it. So I'm going to be voting for it.
Councilmember Santos. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, that may be what the thought of the board was, but I was on I was liaison to the board after this ordinance was passed. And the board knew its responsibilities. It's laid out. When you're brand new to the board, you get this ordinance. So whether we change it or not, whether they follow it or not, is irrelevant. Their job is there, all laid out, and it's up to the board chair and the board members and staff and council and the council liaison to make sure that there are topics that that can be addressed. Again, it's laid out right here. Water and air quality. They're looking at water quality. Pollution prevention. Solid waste disposal. Recycling. Composting would be in there, Mayor. Energy efficiency. Renewable energy and green building. There's your building part. I still don't understand the need for a change. Except for there are some on council who believe that they've been unfairly, the BEA has been unfairly put aside. In fact, we even had a candidate for the board ask if we were going to do away with the BEA. And no one, I don't think anyone is suggesting that. So, I guess if this passes, then it moves on to the second reading. I won't vote for this, and I won't vote for the second reading. That even though I'm not the council liaison in the next 2 years that I'm on council, I'll be watching the Board of Environmental Affairs and the liaison to make sure that they're doing their job. Because if they're not, then we need to make a change at the liaison position and on board members. Because what I think this is going to do, and I said it at our study session, is make this board superior to other boards by being able to cherry pick whatever they want off other boards and commissions. Instead of being, I hope it's a collaborative process, instead of being a cherry picking off of other boards and commissions' agendas.
Councilmember Christensen.
Once again, I can assure you that that was never the intent, is to pick other work. They have plenty of work to do themselves, but the primary work they need to figure out is to reiterate what they are going to do, what their role actually is, given the role of other boards, and also to make a work plan for the next year or two. Because without a work plan, nothing has happened. So that's what I would suggest as the liaison. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley? Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I think I understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Santos. I think that but some of the examples, I think, point out exactly what what arises to the confusion. Two of your examples, one was water. Okay, we have a water board. So are they allowed, currently, the poorly worded scope of the board says they are not allowed to address issues that are before other boards. So, other issue, green building, okay, planning and zoning, you're not allowed to address it. So, on one hand, I think it's poorly written. And if you took it at face value, the plain meaning of the statute or the plain writing of the ordinance basically states that if it's before another board, even if it's in that list that you so eloquently listed off, you're not allowed to touch it. And we're removing that. And I also will be watching the liaison. And will provide free services in the event that it freaks you out that anyone's watching you to file a restraining order. Thanks.
I guess I've got a lot more confidence in the quality people that are applying for these boards that, they're not here to run roughshod over the other boards. They're here, I think, to collaborate and help and bring stuff forward. And I think anything that makes that clear to them is a good thing, and I'm going to support it. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, Councilmember Bagley, and having talked to the city attorney as well, it says air quality and water and green building. They would have been able to look at those issues had they asked, or the liaison asked. And from the liaison's point of view, they have a lot of work. Then why aren't they meeting? If they have so much work, why aren't they meeting? So why the change? The only thing that was added to this ordinance was a couple of sentences in 2010, because the BEA at that time was starting to try to grab other items off of boards and commissions, which was not appropriate. So the things you just talked about, Councilmember Bagley, water quality, green building, they would have been able to do that had the board asked or the liaison asked, but apparently didn't. So, and I do have the same type of confidence in the boards and commissions that we appoint, Mayor. There are some members that I don't vote for. They get on, and they turn out to be really good quality board members. It's always nice to have a nice, diverse board of different ideas and different backgrounds, political philosophies. But, as it was just said, they have a lot of work to do. Then where have they been? Answer me that.
Councilmember Robinson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would just like to point out something that Councilmember Santos just brought up, which I think is the obvious answer. Councilmember Santos pointed out that, had the board asked, they could have looked at topics such as green building. I think the main impediment that we're trying to overcome here is that we don't have other boards having to come to council or ask a staff member from 1 month's board meeting to ask the staff member to bring to a council meeting permission to have something put on their agenda. Items come up for various boards. I can imagine that, if we said to the museum board, we think, the council thinks you're running out of room to store objects. So before you accept any object, you have to tell us that you might want to accept something that's bigger than a paperweight so that we can plan for the storage of objects. And that would absolutely hamstring the museum board from taking any accessions or even being open to accessions, perhaps. And I really think that the point you brought up is, with that impression, mistaken or not, the board the mechanism by which they would even have something on their agenda became so obtuse as to be an insurmountable obstacle for them to do anything. And so they might have felt frozen out. Obviously, some people feel that that was a misimpression, but if it was a misinterpretation, we've let it go on for a number of years now, and we have to bear some responsibility with not even having once-a-year meeting with the BEA board and saying, oh, are there topics that you would like us to direct you to study? We never even asked them the question. So if they are supposed to get their assignment from council, and we never solicit whether or not they want us to assign anything, or it could get, the method we charged them, we did that change, really forced them to decide whether or not they would even approach council to ask to study a topic or ask to have something put on their agenda. So I think we should bear some responsibility for the situation. And then I could certainly understand why people would be less motivated to go to a meeting, even if they were appointed to a citizens board where they felt that they weren't really doing much and that there wasn't much input that they were having. So their time, many people may have felt that their time was not being valued.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Councilwoman Levison. That's exactly part of the problem, is that no other board is forced to come to City Council to ask for permission to study something. The other thing is that we've only recently tasked them with working on the sustainability plan, and this is in the middle of tonight. We're going to be electing new board members, so there's really not much of a point in them starting to do something when they only have one more meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. To the scouts in the audience, be very careful when you speak, because people tend to turn your words around, as it was just done. I wasn't suggesting they come ask for permission to do anything, Councilmember Levinson. It's actually in their duties of what they should do. So twisting words around, which is common case for one or two members of council, taking a fact and completely turning it around when it's actually not a fact. So be careful. The other thing is the misinterpretation. I was liaison for 2 years. I believe the mayor was liaison for no. So who was after me? No. Regardless, it seems like the last 2 years there have been some issues with council liaison. Again, they won't ask for permission, Councilmember Christensen, for sustainability because it's in their job description, powers and duties. Reading the ordinance and reading the packet in front of us is very important in City Council. If you haven't done that, then you're not talking with facts. I'm talking with facts. They're right there. To identify and relate to environmental quality and sustainability. Yes, we just instructed the Board of Environmental Affairs to dust off the sustainability plan from several years ago. They could have been looking at it the whole time. They could be looking at composting this whole time. It's in their job description. So I really don't like it when my words are twisted around. And I will call it out each and every time. And when there's misinformation, like the misinformation that this board couldn't do anything for the last 2 years, it's preposterous.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I believe we've had quite a conversation about this, so it's rather than beat it up anymore, we have a second reading coming up. So I would move ordinance 2015-36.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 6-1 with Councilmember Santos dissenting. See, the next item is
item B, which is ordinance 2015-37. It's the Sienna Park Neighborhood Land Use Amendment.
And I believe Sarah pulled that.
Yes, and I don't know that we have any staff here to address. Oh, I'm sorry, Ava is back there. I couldn't see her.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. Ava, I was just wanting to maybe fill in some blanks for myself on this this change. We just have had some massive ongoing discussion about price points of housing and that sort of thing, and I did note in the presentation that we have chipped away at the number of acres we have for medium density. And while I think you noted that 18.5 acres, is not a lot, it's more than 10% of what we've converted already, is it not?
Mayor Coombs and Councilmember Levison, I have not calculated the percentage out of it, but we consulted with our comprehensive planning team. They did not seem to think that it would have a very large impact on our medium density residential designations.
But how many more times do we convert medium density to single family before it becomes an impact?
I think we have to assess them on a case-by-case basis as we're going through the Envision Longmont process as well.
Okay. I guess one of the concerns I have with this, and I'm not really in favor of making this change right now, especially since I saw what the site plans look like, and I'm trying to imagine the size of houses on something, I have a parcel adjacent to my home that's 33 feet wide and 180 feet deep, I think the lot is, with a very small house on it. And it's pretty close. And there are a lot of properties platted in town that are 50 feet wide and much deeper. In fact, twice as deep. A lot of Old Town lots are, and about 50 feet wide, a lot of them. And it is really difficult to see how, without alley loading, that we could have a neighborhood of single-family homes on such tiny lots. I think that having the townhouses might actually be, and keeping that medium density would be and more efficient land use as far as looking at comp plan guidelines, and then also to imagine that, the value of taking 10 feet off the width and 10 feet off the depth of a lot would lower, that little bit of land would lower the price by, $50,000 to $70,000 from what's been built as single family already. I don't understand that. So I don't know whether or not, for efficient land use, townhouses, and also I think that we've had staff recommend to us that we need more housing. At least that's what we hear. We need more units, and how this would meet with comp plan when we've got the comp plan talking about maximizing what we need as far as housing, types of units and just general capacity. So I don't know if there's a response for you there, but I guess I'm not really understanding how we're reaching some of the goals of the comp plan that we've been talking about, as opposed to when we're talking about housing. And I guess that's why I'm confused.
So Mayor Combs and Councilmember Levison, I guess to respond to that, I think the applicants here tonight, they have just changed hands. Jack Fisher Homes just sold the property this week. However, in your packets is a market study that was prepared by the applicant. Their basis for this is that there is a market for people who want to live in a lower price point, but don't want to have the attached walls. Some people don't want to have a neighbor sharing a wall, and that's just how it is. And they want to live in a single family home on their own lot, and they're willing to live with a smaller lot and pay a smaller price point than to pay the $400,000 or $500,000 in the other subdivisions with the larger lots and the really big homes. They're saying, we want a small home, we want to downsize possibly, but we don't want to live in a, multi-family building, if you will. It's a townhome, but nevertheless, some people, there is a market, I think is what their point was in making this application, is they feel there's a market for people who don't want to live with attached walls. And I just also want to point out that this subdivision is building 20 townhomes. That's still staying on the plan.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. As I recall also in planning and zoning when this was brought up, part of the reason they changed it was because of the construction defects law that we now have. Their bank encouraged them to make it single-family homes rather than attached dwellings because of that law. And we'll see more of that coming until we do a workaround on that construction defect law. That banks won't loan on those attached dwellings or condos or townhouses.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Why are you always so long-winded, Councilmember Finley? I mean, I just wanted to clear up for the record. I'm going to be voting for this, but the reason why I received 2 phone calls today with people. There's some rumor floating around that I have some personal knowledge due to my profession about some of the players, and that whether or not they have or have not unclean hands. And I have no idea who these people are. I couldn't tell you if they were clients, but I can't tell you they're not. And did a conflict check, and I'm unaware of any connection I have with these folks. So just putting that out there.
Councilmember Santos.
Oops. Can I get back in, Councilmember Lewison? Before you go again? Thank you. I move ordinance 2015-37.
All right, I'll second it. Okay, it's been seconded by Bonnie. Councilmember Lewison.
I just want to make sure the record is correct. I don't think the construction defects law applies to townhomes that were just attached by a single wall. I think they're talking about structures that are 4 or more dwellings together that are attached, or in vertical homes in a vertical setting, such as an apartment building or condo building. I don't think if you build 2 units at a time like the old-fashioned row houses, whether or not, I don't think that, and I know the construction defect law does not apply for that, so I just want to make sure we're really correct in what we're saying about the construction defect laws.
Councilmember Christensen.
I have a question for Ava. When I'm looking at these, I'm having a hard time telling whether they're we're talking about the things in the center would be the homes, the proposed home, separate homes.
Yes, Mayor Coombs.
I'm trying to figure out whether there's an alley and whether the frontage would be like giant garages, or whether there would be an alley and the garages would be in the back, which would lend to itself to much more neighborhood and much more attractive kind of development.
Mayor Coombs and Councilmember Christensen. So the plan you're looking at, I can't tell from here if that's the new plan or the platted. It's been platted. It's been platted with townhomes. They were alley-loaded townhomes. So if you're looking at the original plat that I put in your packet for reference, you'll see that the units were all alley-loaded. They kind of went around a horseshoe, if you will. The site layout has changed, and that's in the concept plan that I gave you. And if this land use amendment's approved, they will go forward with preliminary plat and a PUD plan. And that PUD plan changes out the street layout, and it would be the layout that you see in your concept plan. And they would be eliminating some alleys. That they are maintaining the alley on the furthest west side of this section that's left. But they will be eliminating the rest. They're changing the layout so that they're all front-loaded homes. And they will do an alley vacation as well, proceeding with development review after this land use amendment is taken care of.
Does that mean that the garages will be mostly in the front rather than the back?
Yes, that would be correct.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. And just to make it clear, I'm just relaying what the applicant said at Planning and Zoning about their loan and the reason they changed the plat. Also, they're sharing more than one wall. They're sharing 2 walls. They were row houses.
Councilmember Lewison.
So one more point that I would like to have council members consider is that we've seen much come to council on appeal from neighborhoods where medium density was occurring or had been proposed and approved. And I remember a couple of things, specifically Grandview Meadows apartments being expanded and the response we had. I think that to keep these parcels medium density when there's not any impact to adjoining neighborhoods where people would say, we don't want anything that's medium density that's got 6 or more, 6.6 or more than 6 units per acre. This might be one chance where we could still have that medium density and have less impact overall on the city, on neighbors, and still have a very positive outcome as far as having, we need additional building units. We need additional units that are reasonably priced, and I think that the townhome product is also something that we've been told by people, and plus the affordable, the workforce housing task force, that people want something smaller, less maintenance, and we have an aging population. And I think that, you know, this is still the least amount of impact for existing neighborhoods to have medium density.
I have to agree with, well, I disagree with Sarah, but I just, you know, the market study says that people, you know, like myself that are aging gracefully, you know, I don't need a big home anymore, but I don't want to share a wall with other, and there's got to be lots and lots of people like me, and so if they're building a product,
No one's like that.
yeah, no one's like that there's a market for. I mean, obviously, they're not going to invest money without doing a market study and figuring out what people are going to buy. And so, in the fact that Planning and Zoning looked at this and they passed it 6-1, I'm going to support this resolution. I mean, this ordinance. So, Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, there's no one like you screaming down the peak-to-peak highway, you know, not hitting your brakes at all on his bicycle. So those members of council who have issues with multifamily or now are looking for new home, you know, looking for new building and new things to help with our supposed housing crisis in Longmont, stop voting against affordable units that come before council.
Councilman Bradley?
Mayor Coombs, thank you. I move that we pass this along to the Board of Environmental Affairs to give us their input. Now I'll withdraw the motion. I call the question.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, then there's a motion to call the question. It takes a 2/3 majority.
All right, let's vote on the calling of the question. Okay, that passes 6-1. So now it's time to vote on the motion. It was Councilmember Christensen that dissented on. Okay, that passes 5-2 with Councilmember Levison and Councilmember Christensen dissenting.
Mayor Coombs, the next item pulled from the consent was the allocation of, it's item H, allocation of $15,000 from the 2015 General Fund Council contingency for permanent supportive housing study.
Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. My only question is, and you, Karen, you kind of responded to it in an email. Have all the cities gone in on this? Because we've been asked to spend $15,000. I know Boulder and Boulder County have pitched in $20 each. I know they're going around asking everyone. So how's the asking going?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Karen Roney, Community Services Director, Mayor, and Council. So I do not have a more recent update than what I forwarded to council yesterday, I believe, or Friday. So I know that the county staff is going around and are requesting the cities to contribute. So I don't have an update in terms of what I passed earlier. So they are still asking for money.
Okay. Well, it's my hope that the other communities will pitch in and to do that. I have no problem and will move that we allocate $15,000 from the council contingency fund toward the countywide permanent supportive housing study.
All right.
But with that, separate from the motion, I just hope Boulder County doesn't come back and say, no one else pitched in, are you guys going to pitch in some more? Until other communities start getting involved in the housing situation within the county, I don't mind doing Longmont share, but I don't want to do more than Longmont share.
You don't want to do more.
I do not want to do more than Longmont share.
Councilmember Bagley.
I'm torn about this. First of all, I think that as one who has spoken vocally and vehemently against using council contingency funds, I think this is an appropriate use instead of having the line of people at the end of the year saying, hey, give us money and we feel like we should to feel good. But I'm a little torn because on one hand, I know that, I think we've been talking about affordable housing. I think there's a moral issue or a moral component that comes into play when we're talking about the homeless. But the scope of this, on one hand, I'm going to probably vote for it, and I think, because I think that, as our city manager pointed out to me, it allows us to have a seat at the table when we're talking about what we're going to do to address our homeless problem. However, when I was a kid, we would go up to Yellowstone, and I loved Yellowstone. Yes, here's a story, just very brief. We went up to Yellowstone, and when I remember the year they told us that we could no longer feed the bears. Yeah, you're going to need one. You're going to tear up. And I remember that it was fun going up. My parents, when they were kids, would feed the bears, and they'd go down to the city dump and watch this, and it was really cool. And I remember that they told us one year, you know what, we can't feed the bears anymore. And I couldn't understand why. My parents says that, because they come into town and they're dangerous. They can cause problems. I didn't understand. So one day I was sitting there watching my great-grandmother, and she was washing dishes at the cabin, and that bear came up to the window and tried to eat my great-grandma. And I understood that you don't feed the bears, even though they're warm and fuzzy and cool, but they can cause problems. There is a correlation. I don't know what they're going to study or what they're going to come back with, but things that we already know that don't need $15,000 is that when you provide services and handouts, you're going to get people coming for those services and handouts. We know that there's a correlation between substance abuse and homelessness. We know that there's a correlation between lack of mental health care and homelessness. And I would hope that when we spend this $15,000 that we're really going to be looking as a county what we're going to do, because a lot of the crime that we've seen in our newspapers, the hatchet attacks, for example, were homeless people with substance abuse issues. And so I hope that like I said, I just hope that it's solution-based rather than coming back and saying, well, here's the reason why there's homelessness. Because I think all of us are starting to get more and more phone calls about problems that are coming as a result of some of the activities that our nonprofits are doing. And I'm guilty. I was ripping on a local church saying, why aren't they following the rules? And they're basically helping promote this problem. I'm in church on Sunday, and my church basically said, we're going to help this other church do this. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. But we need to do something because it's becoming a problem for our parks, our residents, our downtown area, our crime statistics, our police officers. And so I'll vote for it. But as we have our seat at the table, I would hope that we are looking for solutions. I saw a lot of green lights come on. Remember, I was very nice to everyone today. Very nice.
Councilmember Christensen.
So your grandmother was not eaten by a bear, right?
She was not eaten.
Okay.
But she is
Just
passed.
scared. Well, but it wasn't directly related to. Okay. Okay. So we're not talking about bears. We're talking about humans, our fellow human beings. And yes, there are people. I went to the Councilwoman Finley and I went to the Roosevelt Park discussion about the homelessness last week, and it was very illuminating. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Anyway, this study, it's my understanding, this is part of the it's part of the consortium's efforts, but that's also allied with the 10-year study to end homelessness. It's a regional issue because this is it's a regional effort because it's a regional problem, and it's a national problem too, of course. And it's been started for a while. This is an effort to figure out siting, so it's really very specific. It's an effort to figure out things like where is the most efficient place to site places that for affordable housing, for shelters, for things like that. And so it's pretty detailed, which is what we're all looking for, is something that's a little more detailed. So I support this because it is our share, and I agree with Councilman Santos for the first time tonight that this is something that we don't want to pay more than our share of, because that's not fair. We want everybody to be involved in this. Louisville and Lafayette need to step up. Nederland and Lyons are already in, is my understanding. So, but of course, Longmont and Boulder have the largest share of the homeless, so we do have a responsibility, and I would suggest we support that. Thanks.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Councilmember Christensen, we've agreed many times before. As I told when I first got on council, former Councilmember Banker was surprised that she and I actually voted together on something. I said, Karen, it's going to happen a little bit more than often. And I would agree those other cities need to pony up. We do have, I believe, our unfair share of homeless people, because Longmont is a very giving city. We have many resources that are here, so people know where to go, and those other cities within the county send those folks to Longmont. I'm also very cognizant of your concerns, Councilmember Bagley, because I have the same ones. I just came back from the National League of Cities Hispanic Elected Local Officials Conference in San Francisco, California. The most progressive city in the world, I would believe, maybe outside of Amsterdam. They don't have, not anymore they don't have bears. That's a whole water and other thing issue, which we'll talk about in council comments. The amount of homelessness in San Francisco I found striking everywhere. You know what they have? Inclusionary zoning. And a lot of programs for homelessness. I don't think it's working in San Francisco at all. But my concern is Longmont and within the city, within the county of Boulder County. We need to have that seat at the table. I think it's very important. If we don't, if you're not at the table, you're on the table to be fed or eaten. So this has to work and have some very good solutions, but it can't be willy-nilly. And about the Roosevelt Park meeting, I've had 2 emails from residents saying where that meeting was supposed to be about park and how we're going to deal with the issues at the park. It turned into a homeless meeting instead of what it was intended. And these residents were like, I'll never go to another meeting again, because it was overtaken by how are we going to solve homelessness instead of how are we going to solve the problems at Roosevelt Park. And that's another thing we'll get into council comments. So while just like Councilmember Bagley, I'm very hesitant at the $15,000, but I'll cross my fingers, cross my toes, and see what it gets me as far as solutions in a study.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I want everyone to know I'm against feeding the bears our homeless. I just think that would be bad. And because that would bring the bears into town instead of the homeless. And I'm more afraid of bears than homeless people. I don't really like that analogy for a couple of reasons. One, bears in nature fend for themselves, and some of our homeless can't do that. I am against feeding homeless people who are not our homeless people. I want to make sure that we're only feeding those Boulder County people who are our Boulder County people. We don't have the resources to feed the world. I do believe that we need to be part of this study. I think what Council Member Santos was trying to say is if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we certainly don't want to be on the menu. This is a huge problem for Longmont, and we need a study to tell us where we need to go next.
Councilmember Levinson.
You know, I really, some of the way we're going with this conversation kind of is really bothering me. To say that we will only accommodate people that are our homeless. If they're homeless, they actually don't have a fixed address. You know, sometimes people end up where they do. Their car broke down. Or the story we had gotten from someone who had lived in Longmont and had lost their apartment rental and gotten evicted and was in Berthoud and wanted to be back in Longmont because their daughter was in school here. So do we claim that person as our homeless person? Do we not claim them because they moved to Berthoud for 3 months and lived out of a car there? But, you know, there's kind of been a tradition with some cities in when the weather begins to get cold to give everybody a bus ticket to go to Phoenix or Tempe or San Diego for the winter. And, you know, I firmly believe that, you know, when people are here in our city, you know, I think that the Our Center and some of our nonprofits do have rules about who they will serve, as far as establishing, you know, if they're members of the community. But I also firmly believe that we've already taken one step to consolidate home funds to do a rotating project-based system. And this is really part and a continuation of that philosophy that we've already agreed to with Boulder County cities, to share home funds as far as consolidating so everybody gets to do a big project every few years. So I'm going to go ahead and move that we allocate $15,000 from our contingency fund to participate. Okay.
Sorry, I moved in second.
Well, I want to call the question then.
Councilmember Bagley.
I just want to clear up my bear analogy. I do not want to feed anyone to bears. Councilmember Finley. And I think that in a distorted way, I was trying to say and voice what you said, because I think that what was already been said. I think that everybody here, their heart's saying we should help, but I also think we're saying that there's a component of fairness, meaning that all who are able should contribute to help. And part of the reason why, as you pointed out, Councilmember Santos, part of the reason why people go to Boulder and Longmont is because we have services. I think the Our Center does a great job providing services, provides those services with rules and a foundation and a structure that is conducive to keeping people, homeless or not, you know, in a situation where they will not impose on their neighbors. And I think that the problem that I was referring to about the bears was there are parks in this town where the people near those parks who have homes cannot participate because they are overrun with people who are camping out all day. And so they're congregating, and when they congregate, some people, not all, will cause problems. And so other communities call that loitering. Colorado does not have a public drunkenness law. We're not allowed to impose or enact one. And so my whole point of the bears was the more you give, the more people will come to receive. And we have, just like affordable housing, we need to find a balance. What is appropriate and what will we do? And my understanding is, and my hope, and I'm going to cross all my fingers and toes right along with you, Councilmember Santos, is that we'll be able to, find a solution. And so I do not want my bear comment appearing in the paper saying, Councilmember Bagley says to feed people to bears. And so I didn't hear a second on your call to question, but I think we're pretty close to a vote.
Yeah. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, and I was going to say, Councilmember Bagley, with the press, you have to be very careful about what you say.
She likes bears.
Yeah, you never know. It could be not a day that they don't like you. But no, I think your point is well made about Longmont is a very good city, which is I have found out. We're very fortunate to have the services that we do. Some take advantage of it, and I hope that there are some solutions with this 15,000.
But tonight, our only thing is we're not here to solve the homeless problem. We're just here to say, do we want to spend $15,000 to have a seat at the table for the study? I think we all agree. Why don't we vote? Councilmember Christensen.
Okay, I'd just like to point out one other thing, that when we pursue the housing first problem, it takes about $24,000 to put someone in a home. Whereas if we do nothing, which is what we've been doing largely, it costs about $64,000 in police services, social services, hospital services, and incredible annoyances to the neighbors and businesses. I talked to the people at Cafe Luna. They have a very difficult time because they're kind, but they're running a business, and they also are human beings, and they don't like being abused. They don't want to feel like they have to hire a bouncer. But because there's no other place for people to go, they tend to go there. So, anyway, I'm done with that for now.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Councilmember Santos?
Well, I'm confused. Are you suggesting that we should put, that the city's done nothing over the years for homelessness? That's what I heard. But also that we're going to put everyone in homes? Is that what the suggestion is?
Basically, what she was saying was it's cheaper to address homelessness and find a solution than it is to pay for emergency medical services and those types of things. I think that was the point she was trying to make.
I got that point, Mayor. Just that it sounded like we should just spend money on homes for everybody.
No, I didn't hear that from her. But why don't we vote and move on?
What leadership? What leadership?
Poking the bear.
What?
Poking the bear.
That passes 7-0. Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
Just bacon.
What's that?
Okay, let's come back to order and start our meeting again.
We got 2 hours.
You could be home with your kids for that.
That's true.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is the financial planning for 2016 and beyond, and Jim Golden will present this.
Very captivating.
Mayor Coombs, members of the council, I'm Jim Golden, Director of Finance. So we are now in middle of July, which is smack in the middle of our process here as a city staff, putting together the proposed 2016 budget. So in the past years, we have checked in with you during the preparation of our budget and during our process so that we can get a general sense of direction on some of the things that we complete or include within that proposed budget, and particularly for the general fund. So we have accumulated requests for the budget, and as often is the case, those requests do outnumber the amount of resources available, particularly in the general fund and the public improvement fund. So earlier this month or last month, the council did discuss the desire for additional funding for affordable housing. We thought it would be best to also try to identify a larger picture of some of the needs or financial challenges that we are facing, not just in this 2016 budget, but also beyond that. So this focus is really limited tonight to the tax-supported general fund and public improvement fund. Some of the things that I'll be covering do have an impact on the enterprise funds as well, so they have a global impact on the organization. So that should be kept in mind, but my focus here will be on beyond those self-sufficient enterprise funds and on the challenges that we have in the competition for limited tax revenues from those two funds, the general fund and the public improvement fund. My hope tonight is to try to keep this discussion tonight at a broad level, as opposed to get into the individual detail on some of these issues. We do provide that type of detail in September. That would be our plan as part of the proposed budget, and also the proposed CIP in particular, and also in our individual presentations that we make to the City Council each September. If you do have detailed questions, we will try to answer them tonight, but we might not have to return instead with some answers to you in the near future. So with that, I'd like to begin by identifying some of the significant challenges that we are facing. And the first of those is one that you've heard us talk about for the last few years now, and that's the budget reset in the general fund. We've been doing that for about 3 years. The reset gap now, I'm estimating that to be about $1.6 million. It's a little different from what I had in the communication, but we, in working through our budget compared to last year, I made some adjustments to that. That dollar amount does increase each year with our growth in sales and use tax, at least until the point in time that we do reset the allocation of the 2% sales tax between the general fund and the public improvement fund, and reset it back to where it was in 2008. The difference in that is equal to about $1 million in 2016. And then we do have some City Council one-time items that you did already give us some direction to move in this upcoming budget. And that number is actually about $167,000 is the amount of the difference between what we started last year with and what we actually did include in the 2015 budget. So you've given us direction in that regard. Other reset items really come down to changes in administrative transfer fees, moving our one-time funding for technology improvements into ongoing. And at some point, we hope to be able to include all of that with ongoing dollars, absorb that probably within the next 2 budgets, hopefully. So the allocation of sales and use tax is pretty important because of the fact that the Public Improvement Fund has been underfunded for some time and hampers its ability to fund the infrastructure repair and replacement. So in our previous budgets, we have done some things to try to backfill
the underfunding through one-time transfers from the general fund. Really like to get beyond that so that the public improvement fund has an ongoing source at a full 0.3% as it did in the past. Also, I think it's really important to get this reset done sooner than later because it's been already 7 or so years since the economic downturn, and if we get hit by another one, it's not going to be a good thing if we haven't fixed our condition from the first one as of yet. So the next area is infrastructure repair and replacement. Now, we do have a lot of infrastructure that is included in our self-supporting enterprise funds. Again, not addressing those. I'm really concentrating on the general fund and the public improvement fund. General fund, as you know, is mostly operating expenses. 75% of it is budgeted for salary and benefits. So we have very limited ability to do much infrastructure repair and replacement out of the general fund. We do some parks replacements from year to year, and depending on what kind of one-time expenses we have available, we might be able to do a little more. But as you're familiar, a lot of those one-time type expenses are generally limited to what's included in the public improvement fund's budget. A couple of years ago, the council instituted the $2 park maintenance fee to fund parks rehab projects, and also at that time did make a commitment to devote about $700,000 annually of the public improvement fund for those same type of expenses. So that's a commitment we're trying to follow as well. The most recent 2015 to 19 CIP that you already reviewed and approved did begin to identify some of our infrastructure repair and replacement needs. Some of the projects, and I'm going to drop references to the CIP numbers, but the projects that we've identified are the Civic Center rehabilitation.
Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt. The commitments that we've made previously, will there come a time that you or Harold will come tell the council perhaps we cannot abide by those commitments and maybe we need to rethink those?
I think you gave us some general direction. We certainly can revisit that every year.
No, what I'm suggesting is that if it comes up and both of you see opportunity where we may not be able to do the $700,000 at one point, that we may need to use some of that money in other places, I would hope that you guys would make that recommendation to council instead of holding us holding you to that commitment.
So the short answer is yes. I mean, if we have a significant capital need that arises that is demanding those dollars, it is our obligation to bring that forward. I mean, the budget as a whole and as we go through this process is about choices. And it's what you fund, what you don't fund. Our intent, though, is to try to accomplish this because, as council will remember when we had that conversation about the park infrastructure, that is essentially the same issue that we're talking about in terms of the infrastructure of other facilities.
Right.
So it's that broader category. So I think the intent is to stay true to that so we can accomplish what we set forth in the master plan.
Right. It's just, and Jim, you've always, since I've been on council, you've given us really good advice about what to do and what not to do. But I would hope that if you see something that, and both of you, I hope if you see something that can, and Teresa, that if you guys see something that needs to be tweaked, and even though council's giving you direction, say you might want to relook at this again. That's my personal hope.
Okay.
Councilmember Levison. Oops.
Since Councilmember Santos broke the ice here, I would also like to, in the same vein, remembering our commitments, that we also made a commitment to the public that we would not have those extra park fees and other fees tacked on. And I, for one, had always been reluctant when we said we were going to sunset something and then we then find we can't sunset it. I think that when we make those votes, I would hope that you would also bring to council the commitments that we made as a council to say, we want to talk about when we sunset it. We want you to make sure you give us a number that includes the sunset, that doesn't say, well, we didn't really meet it, so we suggest we continue to unsunset it. I really feel it's a public integrity issue for not only the council, but for us fiscal management of funds, especially since we've seen so many people coming to us with the raises in utility costs we've had. Having $8 less a month of these extra fees that we put on to meet emergency needs and the parks maintenance fee, it would really be a good thing for our citizens to have those dollars removed and actually lower their utility bill and fulfill the commitment we made.
Mayor Coombs, members of the council, and we'll continue to make the recommendations, and you'll give us direction. We did recommend actually that the parks fee not be sunsetted originally, and that by sunsetting it, it made it a budget reset item. So, and you did make some direction after that about trying to get rid of that. But I mean, we will make our best recommendations to you, and you can give us the direction that you see fit. The projects that we identified for the first time in 2015 to 19 CIP were the Civic Center rehabilitation and the St. Vrain Channel improvements. But then we have had a number of CIP projects in our unfunded CIP for a while now, for things like the Centennial Pool renovation, irrigation systems at 2 of our golf courses, maintenance facilities at all of 3 of our golf courses, remodel these council chambers, and Kensington Park rehabilitation. So we have looked at those needs and actually reevaluated them for this upcoming CIP that you'll get. Some of those have risen in cost, and some significantly, and particularly with the Civic Center rehabilitation. We have actually created some new projects similar to that for the library and Safety Justice Center. So we have done assessments for those buildings and have identified a new scope. Total cost now over the 5-year CIP for those 3 projects is now $14.4 million. And actually, beyond that, 10 years beyond that, we anticipate another $6 million for the Civic Center rehabilitation, which is a major portion of those projects. You'll see and hear about the detail on those in September. There will be a significant amount of unfunded infrastructure projects that will be included as part of the PIF unfunded projects list. Now, even if we restore the full funding of the sales tax to the Public Improvement Fund, that would still only give us about $2.5 million annually available to cash fund projects. We do already have $2.8 million of our Public Improvement Fund that goes towards debt payments every year. The difference that we would have if we restore the sales tax would be about $2.5 million more. That's not nearly enough to be able to fund the scope of the projects that we're identifying here. Currently, there's a list of projects in your communication on page 293. There's about a dozen of them. They total over $30 million, and the Civic Center rehabilitation is over half that amount. In addition to that, safety and justice rehabilitation is $2.9 million. Library rehabilitation is over $2 million. The irrigation systems in the golf courses, 2.4 at Twin Peaks, and it's almost $1 million at Sunset. Maintenance facility at Ute Creek is 1.1 million, and at Twin Peaks that maintenance facility is 1.7 million. And then we also do have the need to replace the museum storage facility, and we have identified that as a joint project with Public Safety's evidence storage, close to $2 million. Now we have included in here some infrastructure projects from the Golf Fund, or that previously were part of the Golf Enterprise Fund. The Golf Fund has been challenged for a number of years now to be able to generate resources beyond covering its operating expenses and some minor capital projects, but not being able to take on the scope of these type of numbers for capital projects. So in turn, we have included these as requests now from the Public Improvement Fund, because it doesn't seem like the Golf Fund would be able to fund it. But I am Also pointing out that without any added resources, we do not have any much of a better prospect of being able to fund them out of the Public Improvement Fund either. Affordable housing funding, we've talked about that in the last few weeks, so what we've included that here, the different types of sources of funding that were discussed out of those, or came out of those discussions a couple of weeks ago were specific budget amounts potentially budgeted in the city's general fund as a transfer to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, or a portion of the growth in the property tax revenue that is expected to grow next year. So that's here. Employee compensation is another issue that we look at in our annual budgets. Our current financial policies, the city will strive to establish prevailing market rates of pay for the city positions. We're going to bring this again back to you in September, but wanted to at least cover this in summary form to give you an idea of what we've been talking about over the past year. We have historically used the midpoint of a pay grade, and now for each individual position's midpoint to define what is considered to be market for our positions. Some entities choose to compensate their employees at a greater level than we do in Longmont. So what they do is they first define that market, and then they build their pay ranges off of that to a higher amount than the market midpoint. But historically, we have used the market midpoint. So our discussions over the past years, or since the last budget process regarding our compensation philosophies, to take a look at that. We are wanting to put together a compensation philosophy that is sustainable in both good and bad economic times, and that will also still continue to allow us to attract the best talent to the city and retain them here. Since the downturn in 2009, we have been challenged in our ability to increase compensation for our employees. It's been limited due to the financial resources, and also the market has actually been slowed down as far as the salaries being paid by our competitors. But over the past 6 budgets from 2010 through 2015, our base pay increase to an employee that is compensated at or above market has been a total of 3%. So in the past two budgets, those employees that fall into that category have received no base pay increase, but they did receive a one-time payment of $1,000 in 14 and $1,500 in 15. So now this is not all of our employees. There's a number of our employees that have been below market in the same time period, and so they have been able to receive increases at a greater rate than the 3% that I'm referring to. And then we also have other positions that have fallen behind the market. If the markets for their individual positions have moved significantly, we have moved those positions up individually in our annual pay plans. So I'm just referring to some positions that do not fall into those two categories. So our recent discussions regarding compensation focused on how can we make use of our pay range that currently extends to 10% above the market midpoint. The results of those discussions that we had were to come up with 3 proposed changes to our current philosophy. The first is to change our philosophy of paying at 100% of market midpoint to 102% for employees meeting or exceeding expectations. The second is to modify our current pay range from a max of 110% down to 107% of market. And then the third is to implement criteria to award for base pay beyond 102% when an employee is demonstrating extraordinary performance. Now, that first change about going from 100 and 102% for our employees doesn't change where we would set our midpoints. They would remain at 100%. But we recommend changing our current practice of budgeting and managing salaries at 100%, instead moving to 102%. It's a change in philosophy, but we believe that the city has high expectations and accountability level for our employees. We do always have stress to our employees that we want to be a world-class organization. We continue to ask our employees to do more with less, And statistically, our FTE per capita is very low compared to other Front Range municipalities. So if our expectations are going to be higher than normal or average, we believe that our employees maybe should be compensated for meeting those expectations at an amount higher than that midpoint or average. The second and third changes would address further utilization of the range beyond 102%. We want to lower that range to 107% because we find that over time, designing a system that gives us the ability to reward employees at significantly over that midpoint is really not sustainable financially. So we propose to then fund an extra 1% of compensation in all of the department budgets that would allow for employees who, as I said, would demonstrate extraordinary performance to receive some sort of compensation between 102 and 107% of the market rate midpoint.
Councilmember Larson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jim, I support the philosophy that you're outlining here. I would like a little bit of information, though, to give us some additional, trying to think of a good word to use here, support for this, these kind of compensation ideas, in that I know that the competition for employees is heating up, and I want to know whether or not we have a top performer, what would be the true cost to the city to lose somebody and have that position go unfilled, or the expectation of the next person coming in may even be higher. Can we talk to our HR director and get some feeling for how much it costs the city when we have a high performing employee, that so that we can justify looking at this kind of salary to what the base cost would be to the city to go out and hire somebody at that level that would have that kind of drive, and with also factoring in what kind of loss of continuity and work on projects that gap might leave for us. So I think that we have some additional evidence that's HR based that would be great to know. For example, every time you turn over a position, how much does it really cost us? And is it better when we have that higher performing person and justified then to, invest in them by compensating them at a different level?
So I have had those conversations with Joanne, who is the new Chief Human Resource Officer, to actually talk about that very issue. What I can tell you is the replacement cost depends on the position itself, and so it'll vary dramatically. So those highly trained technical positions, your actual cost of bringing those folks in may be much greater than others, but we're aware of that. We've also asked staff to prepare some information to talk about the staffing levels and what that looks like. So as Jim indicated in the September presentation, there will actually be much more detail provided to you to get at exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, moving on to the retirement plan funding. So actually when I started this, putting together this presentation, this was a bigger issue than it is today, which is a good thing. So we have, as you know, we have a defined benefit pension plan for our general employees. That's our non-uniformed employees. It's the General Employees Retirement Plan. We refer to it as the GERP plan, and it's funded through contributions by our employees as well as the city. And since the downturn in 2008, we've had a lot of variance in the amount of contribution requirements as well as of the funding status of this plan. And we have had a couple of good years in the last 2 years, and just recently in the last week received the draft of the actuary study for 2015, and we have found again that our funding status has increased some. We're up to a 93.9% funding status, as well as a drop in our actual contribution requirement. It was as high as 12.4 or 5% 2 years ago, and our requirements dropping to 11.5 for this year. So we've been funding it. We left our funding at 12.4% in this year's budget, even though it dropped last year to 11.9. and our intention would be to recommend do the same. And I think by doing that, and hopefully with some investment performance that meets our goals, we will be able to move this plan closer to 100% funding status. 93.9% funding status is really good for a public plan. The real chore here is that fact that in Colorado, under Tabor, we're just not able to do any increases in benefits to our retirees unless we are at 100% funding, actually greater than 100% funding, so you can afford to absorb an increase without dropping below 100%. So hopefully our good performance recently will continue. And then new facilities, and in particular, we've identified the competitive pool and ice rink facility here that council will be hearing about next month. Feasibility report coming back to you for consideration. The current estimate for this project out of the CIP at least, and I think that'll be revised, but that's $31.7 million. Again, these are one-time costs, but there would be an operating cost component to this type of facility to consider as well. Once you look at those feasibility results, you'll probably get a better idea of what level of expense that might involve. But if the revenues from the facility are not able to cover those operating costs, it's likely that we would need an increased revenue source to be able to fund any differences in the cost to operate a new service level like that. But clearly it's going to take a bond issue to fund that type of a project and likely potentially sales tax increase for funding operating costs related to it. Other new facilities or expansions of existing facilities that are a part of our CIP that you will be seeing or have seen in the past or will see updated in this upcoming CIP. The Safety and Justice Center remodel and expansion, that one is over $20 million. Expansion of the Sunset campus, cost of $1.5 million, the Parks building on Sunset. And the U Creek Clubhouse is an unfunded project for some time now, but it's at $2.5 million. Last other thing on challenges and identifying them, I did not include this in the communication, but I guess I will speak briefly about what we're facing in the city's general fund budget in 2016. We are, I have no clue where we're at in the funding part. We're just sorting through all sorts of different adjustments and narrowing down on dollars and revenue sources and things right now. But what we do know is our requests and what they number at. We have level 1 requests, which are basically things that we're going to have to absorb into the budget because we're going to face them whether we fund them or not. It's $740,000 in the general fund, and level 2 type requests is $932,000, but that's just for operating dollars, and we have close to 30 individual FTE that have been requested, and that's an additional cost over and above the $932,000, and that would be a considerable cost if we would actually fund that many FTE. We do have annually a number of unfunded FTE requests, but those are the type of operating unfunded issues we're seeing in the general fund. On a one-time basis, we have over $6 million of requests for dollars. Part of that, about $1.8 million of that is for replacement of police radios that are no longer going to be supported. So it's going to become a critical need. It almost falls into a CIP type category, but we will not have $6 million of one-time dollars to cover those type of expenses. We're closer between the $1 and $2 million level on an annual basis. Okay, so the resources that we can turn to for these type of needs, property tax. You're aware, if you saw, I'm sure you've heard that and expected as much, that the assessed valuations for properties have increased in the annual assessment process this year, and so we are unable at this point in time to get an actual estimate of how much revenue difference that would be. I took the 18% that the county said that Longmont residential values were increasing, and applied that to our residential value currently, and that alone would generate about $1.3 million of additional property tax by itself. Now, there are things that can happen to that. There are many appeals going on currently that the assessor's office is entertaining currently. In addition to that, the Gallagher Amendment does have an impact on the eventual final property tax, and what that can do is change the residential assessment percentage downward, which is currently 7.96% compared to 29% for business. But if there's a large enough growth in residential statewide, this is not just looking at Longmont, but statewide, then that could drop and actually make an impact in this estimate altogether as well. So I just tried to roughly throw out what we can potentially be considering, and then that doesn't take any consideration for commercial assessment increases as well. Under Tabor, revenue growth is limited to any one fiscal year. When we went through the economic downturn in 2009, our property values dropped. We lost a certain amount of property tax for a number of years. Table limits are applied to the annual base of assessed valuation every year or every other year in the reassessment. Puts the government in a position where its revenue may not be able to return to the level that it was at before the economic downturn, because of the limitation that is based on the percentage of actual growth, and that's defined specifically. But in Longmont in 1996, our voters did pass a voter-approved revenue change, and that really does exempt Longmont from the revenue limitations underneath Tabor, and that really is, by doing that, our voters did see fit for it to allow us to keep the revenues that we receive instead of turning around and rebating any excess revenues underneath Tabor. So get a sense, from 2008 to 2014, our property tax dropped 3.2%. It was $473,000 decline in our property tax over that 6-year period, or from 8 to 14's budgets. So part of our increase this year will restore what we lost of that $473,000, and anything beyond that would be growth. Now that could seem significant, but if you annualize that over that 8 years since 2008, it's probably not quite as significant. Sales and use tax revenue, I've given you some information on our sales and use tax. We have a 3.275% rate. We have 3 sources of earmarked sales tax, and then the 2% that we've talked about between the general fund and the public improvement fund. We really would like to return that funding level so that it can start to address the needs in the public improvement fund. But the only way for us to derive any more sales and use tax revenue beyond our annual growth is if we were to increase the rate. If we're not finished with our sales tax projections for this coming year. We've done our annual review as we do typically, and do our projections for what will take place in all of the different categories. And then I make adjustments because the bottom seems to be falling out if you've read my emails. But on top of that, we are still messing with the impact of the village at the peak. So hopefully within the next week or two, we'll have that resolved. David Stardens and I did just talk to developers yesterday. We're just trying to get an idea of what's going to be there when, try to figure out how much increment is going to be generated, and in turn, what kind of an impact potentially the cannibalization of revenues might have on the base revenues in the general fund, how much additional revenues for the 3 earmarked funds. So hard for me to put a number just yet on what we would generate, but there's not going to be a lot of growth once in the general fund alone, if any, once you flip out the change back to the public improvement fund of flipping that $1 million back into the public improvement fund. Theoretically, you could potentially replace that with property tax revenue, though. Third source of revenue would be bonding capacity. We do have a certain amount of bonding capacity Currently, we have a bond issue that expires in 4 years. 4 years is not too soon, but not too far off. That was the bond issue that was paid for it was issued back in 2000, and it paid for the Museum Cultural Center and the Rec Center, as well as improvements on the Roosevelt Park campus. So we have technically 5 years of payments still remaining on those at $2.7 to $2.8 million per year. So when those pay off in 19, we would essentially have $2.8 million of public improvement fund revenue. That's where that is coming from, is the public improvement funds revenue that we could use to, again, bond once more. Now, of course, it takes a vote to bond even if you have the money, but assuming that you've got that authority to bond, just depends on interest rates and depends on that we don't have another economic downturn, because that could change all these projections. But 4% interest rate could generate about $38 million in bonding in 2019. At a 5% rate, it would only be a little over $35 million. But it just gives you a sense of your ability to do, without any type of increase in a tax base or tax revenue, you are able in 4 years from now to go back out with a vote sometime between now and then and authorize a bond issue that could take care of some of the needs that we've talked about, at least from $35 to $38 million. You could try and do that sooner. That drastically reduces the amount you can leverage from those dollars, because it's kind of, the bond would wrap over around the amount of debt service we're paying today. It would involve capitalized interest. It's probably not something we would do unless we were really urgently needing to take care of things. But it's just a consideration to keep in mind, but we would have to refigure what that would do if we wanted to do it sooner. Now, if we wanted to bond sooner otherwise, and in excess of those dollars that I just referred to, that would require an increase in the sales and use tax rate. So I just threw, for instance, in your communication, a $40 million bond issue. If we were to do that next year at a 4.5% interest rate, it would require a debt payment of just a little over almost $3.1 million. To generate that level of sales tax would require an increase in our tax rate of 0.71%. So we have a 3.275% tax rate today. It would take it to 3.446%. That again would take care of a $40 million bond over 20 years. Now, tax rate, again, that also requires a vote, just like a bond authorization would. But and they can only be asked for at a November election. I gave you some information, attachments in the communication on area sales tax rates for other cities in close vicinity, mostly northern Colorado, northern municipal area, northern metro area, I should say, and to give you just an idea of what our competition, in a sense, is looking at. Most of the cities our size or larger do have higher rates of sales tax than we do. And some of the smaller cities do have lower rates. Excuse me. Loveland has a lower base rate, but if you go to Centerra, there's a PIF, and we designated what the difference is in there, and that's quite a high rate there. But then we also included what the total rate is, since we're included in some of those metro districts that some of those other area cities are not. But just to give you an idea of what the different rates are like, we included those in the communication. So options. So I have some options or recommendations that we wanted to at least throw out tonight for consideration, feedback, or give us some direction going forward into the budget. So as far as reset of the allocation of the 2%, we think that it's important to get that done so that we can provide some better funding to the Public Improvement Fund. We think it would be best to utilize the first $1 million or more, or whatever it takes, of the increase in the property tax revenue for that purpose in 2016's proposed budget. If there are additional property tax dollars above and beyond that, assuming we did see a $1.3 million increase, we could, based on your prior direction, we could take that $300,000 of additional property tax increase and use that towards the affordable housing direction that you discussed a couple of weeks ago at one of your meetings. And if there are further growth above and beyond that, I guess what we would say at this point, knowing that we still don't have a complete proposed budget, is it could be a mixture of lowering the budget reset even further, further funding for affordable housing, or potentially we may need to have some of that to be used to balance the ongoing expenses in the city's general fund, trying to absorb the costs that I referred to. Because while I did refer to the level 1, level 2 expenses, what I didn't refer to is the cost of our pay plan to keep it at market under the old methodology. We are also negotiating contracts with our 2 unions that are also going to be considered as well in this upcoming budget. So now, considering the recommendations I did talk about on our philosophy for compensation, we do truly believe that we would like to get the council to buy in on those and adjust our compensation philosophy, but we also do not think that is the right time to do that. We think that that goal is not outweighing the need to take care of the needs I just talked about with the Public Improvement Fund, with the affordable housing and budget reset. We do recommend the other 2 proposed changes for compensation philosophy be implemented in 2016, lowering the maximum limit of our ranges from 110 to 107%, and still budgeting an additional 1% in pay for each department to utilize the higher end of the range, but instead of between 102 and 107, we would instead recommend to do that between 100 and 107%, again, for employees that demonstrate exceptional performance. We do think it's critical to do that. We have not been really able to utilize above market midpoint in our ranges for quite some time now, and it's starting to look to our employees like there's a carrot there that they can never reach. So finally, after a complete detailed review of our capital needs, decisions should be made as to whether projects are necessary to be completed and whether a bonding or a tax increase question a tax increase question should be proposed. And again, with those, it can only happen in November elections. If there's any inclination to do that this year, you'd have to discuss that before September. Okay. So, and those are those 2 bullets there. That's the extent of my presentation. We can try to answer any questions.
Councilmember Bagley. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Random question. How long have you been with the city?
That's relevant?
Very relevant. How long have you been with the city?
I have been with the city over 35 years.
And how long was the director? Finance?
1987.
So, long time.
True.
If you died tomorrow, who would have given this presentation?
If you Teresa would have done that. That's why she's sitting up here.
So I just want to point out that there's a lot of institutional knowledge in you, and I hope you're planning for succession at some point, because we would miss you. The question, I guess, what do you?
Not now, right?
No bears. So, like if you got eaten by a bear, that would be bad.
Is death the only way out?
Yes. We're like the mafia, like gang. You can't get out. That's the only way. So, what do you need from us, if anything?
I think in general we've made those recommendations and about how we would intend to treat the increase in property tax, and I think we would want to hear your concurrence, or if you feel differently, then give us that direction.
So I think on the property tax, I remember the $1 million going to restore the funding for the Public Improvement Fund. Now, that gives us a start on the capital piece. because that puts more money into it. Now, I don't want you all to think that solves the capital piece, because it doesn't. It just starts it. And then the other piece that Jim talked about was that additional piece going into the Affordable Housing Fund that you all talked about in terms of bringing back different options. This would be one of those layers of those options, and that would be the 300,000.
At least, yeah.
At least 300,000. And then at that point, he sort of said, okay, here's the next piece in terms of if there's more dollars, then we would use that to either reduce the reset more, put more to affordable housing, or we may need it to balance the budget. But that's the initial look at this. And the reason we're asking you this question now is because that's the basis as we put together the rest of the budget. Sort of what do you take off the top?
I guess the other piece that you just didn't mention is, as much as we joke, or I joke, that I'd really like the ice rink and swimming pool combo, I also realize that another rec center would be pretty expensive, and I would not be for advocating a sales tax increase, and would have no problem waiting until 2019 to figure out a way to pay for it. That's the only thing I wanted to mention.
When you were talking about this property taxes going up and using the residential, and you kind of figured that, it went up 18%, so you can make an estimate of how much that is. But commercial's gone up too considerably, and that's another chunk of money that I think we could potentially use, because I know I looked at our assessment, and it's a lot.
And Mayor, what we were trying to say is, we're not saying there's not going to be more than that. We know there's going to be a commercial component, but we also know there could be appeals, and
right.
and the assessment ratio can change. Right. So we just wanted to give you a sense, and we're going to have to make an assumption at some point of what we're going to build that budget based on. And then, as you may recall, that the county will give us a number after we're done, and right before we walk up to you, and so we'll know in September what we might have to work with, and we can make adjustments to the proposed budget if necessary. So we will make an assumption as we move forward, but we're probably going to be inclined to be conservative about that, so we don't try to budget something that we don't have.
Okay, great. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I have no issues with compensation, with the recommendations that you made. I'm very leery about an increase in sales tax. Having just been from San Francisco, is like 8.75, and combined we're at what 8.2 and change, I believe.
8.28.
Yeah, we're getting closer. Yeah, the county I used to know it, and the county just raised it with the flood stuff. I'd be hesitant to raise it anymore to be like a city of the size of San Francisco. We compete with other communities, not only in the state but around the country, for businesses, and whether they're homegrown or brought in. So in that case, I would not be in favor of a sales tax ballot question. The one thing that I would be in favor of, I didn't protest my assessment. It went up $56,000 or $58,000 on my home. I probably should have. I should have protested, but I didn't. I would have no issue with using the $1 million as you suggested, but if for some reason they come in lower, if we need to start off the Affordable Housing Fund at a lower amount, I know it's recommended $1 million a year for 10 years. If we need just to start it up, I think as you suggested, 300 and change. Yeah, 300,000
from the property tax.
From the property tax, right? Exactly. But if it somehow we're coming lower, 250,000. If we get it started, I have no problem with that, as long as we're getting it started. So, I mean, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But I think, Jim, you've always given us you and Teresa have always done a really good job of giving us the budget over the years, and I greatly appreciate that. The one thing that I would suggest is that we really, in the $30 million of CIP issues with the Civic Center and Justice Center, I have been asked by the golf board that somehow some of these things need to be funded out of the general fund. I said that's not possible, and I don't think that would fly at council. The one thing that I would suggest that we look at other options is the Ute Creek maintenance facility. Harold, you and I talked about that a couple of times, about other ways of them not building a whole facility, but maybe a Kwanzaa hut or something of that nature. There is a lot of equipment that's out there that needs to be protected and protected properly. But I would advocate for the irrigation system at both Twin Peaks and Sunset. I turned 45 this year, and I'm just around the same age as the one at Twin Peaks or Sunset. And they've done a really good job of maintaining those. But everything else I think that is on here is reasonable, and it's going to be tough, but you've brought us some really good budgets over the years, Jim, that we've been able to survive and do well.
Mayor Coombs, members, a couple of clarifications. For one, we weren't recommending a sales tax rate increase.
Oh, no, that was a suggestion. It was just an option, right?
Yeah, we're trying to identify for options, but I'm also identifying you a heck of a lot of needs.
Sure.
And I guess I will just reemphasize those building assessments. I mean, it's you'll hear more about it. You can hear about it sooner or later, but it's going to be a critical issue, and we can't fund those at much more. We got $2 million and change or so to work with in that PIF for everything. So those are some pretty significant dollars that we have no solution for currently.
And thanks for the clarification. And I wasn't saying the staff was advocating a sales tax. This is one of the options, but I'm not advocating for that at all. It has come up several times at golf board. The credit card, the fleet fund. As much as I would not like to use the fleet fund, if it was possible to use, I know the golf fund has a loan out for units, golf carts, but there are perhaps other things on this list that can be accomplished with maybe a short-time small loan from the credit card they fleet.
And Mayor Coombs, members of council, and we use the fleet fund, but only when we have a repayment source.
Right, exactly. It would have to have that. Yeah.
I mean, if the golf fund had the ability to repay, we would be willing to leverage the golf course to make those. We do actually use the fleet fund to, we refinance the Ute Creek note through the fleet fund
and
at a much lower rate or payments. We just, at this point in time, the fleet fund, the golf fund can barely make much more than that.
No, and I agree. And I'm not advocating for us to use the fleet fund to help with the golf fund, but maybe there are other departments, other issues that has a revenue source that can potentially pay back the fleet fund over time. You're really good at finding.
I've identified. I want to be straight with you all because I don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm going to go back and find more money.
Oh,
I've identified all the options, and so you've seen them, and there's nothing hidden.
Where's that money tree?
So.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Councilman Levison.
I'm going to buck the trend a little bit here and ask that if we have a bit of a windfall with property taxes, that we retire some of those fees on the utility bills early. I know that the affordable housing issue is very important, but I also think we need to strike a balance with people that are budget constrained, a lot of our seniors that are thankfully still in their homes, and other families that are struggling that over the years have taken these increases in utility rates and accepted them, but the additional fees have really become a burden to people. So if we can't do even $2 a month, I mean, I'd like to see what number it would take to retire one of them and check that off our list and make it disappear. Because while it may be, it's a symbolic gesture, number one, but number two, it would really show our commitment to getting rid of some of these additional fees, which I know people, it's very important for our community to have the affordable housing, but if it could take a couple $100,000 to relieve the entire city of something, then I think we could look, I'd hope that we would look at something like that.
Mayor Coombs, members of council, off the top of my head, I'd say the $2 is close to $1 million. The $2 fee in total is $1 million, right?
$1 million.
It's, well, I'm sure, I'm almost positive, because we were generating $440,000 when we had a dollar fee on the bill 2 or 3 years ago. So it's probably at $2 close to $1 million.
And see, if it's $1 million, I don't ever really see people giving that up. I mean, finding another revenue source for that, and I think we need to start working on that. And I know that we've had these discussions about budget shortfall. The other thing that I would like to know is that when the property taxes increase that much, how does that affect the TIF when we're paying, when the property tax, so would that be considered do they figure out an additional increment beyond what is just the normal increment that has to do with the inflation of commercial property taxes, and will that accelerate paying back the TIF?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, so for when there's an increase from a reappraisal, it also increases the base year as well. They refigure the base year as well as the growth. So there's going to be an increase in TIF, but all of the increase from this reappraisal will not all be TIF. Some of it will continue, or some of that growth will go to the taxing entities. So, okay. and so, I mean, I'm looking at that more from a DDA perspective. From the, there's the value of the mall is it's coming. It's not not there yet anyway. Yeah. So I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have there. There's no reappraisal taking place today. Mm-hmm. Maybe in a couple of years from now it might have some impact, but not in the current TIF that exists now. We're not expecting any property tax TIF to begin at the Village of the Peaks for 2 more years at least.
Okay. And then one last request. Would you please remind council when we're considering development incentives what the impact of waiving the public improvement fee or these other impact fees are to the budgets of things, because it's nice that we have this incentives package to offer, but when we're so short in the public improvement fund, it would be nice to be really reminded of the general impact if we're going to be starting to waive fees to incent certain kinds of buildings or development in certain areas of town.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. If you're looking for consensus, which I know you are, I certainly am in favor of using that first $1 million for the public improvement fund. The additional dollars to use for affordable housing, I think, is a good goal. But when you look at the needs for the capital improvement projects, is there a way to use some of that money for those as well?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, certainly if that was your direction, I mean, you could even change the allocation of the 2% to beyond what it used to be, so that greater than 0.3 was going to public improvement fund. So yes, that if that was your direction, we could figure out a way to do that.
I don't know if it's my direction. Because we don't really know how much money that's going to be yet, for one thing. Right. When we know that, maybe we can look at that. I am certainly in favor of your suggestions on staff compensation. I think those are good things, and we need to keep our good people. So, if you're looking for consensus on that, I'm in favor of that for that one. I also don't think it's quite the time for any sort of tax increase. Our people are not ready for that yet, and I do think that when in 2019, when we retire that bond, we can wrap some stuff into that and really do some major projects at that time. So thank you for this. I always look forward to your presentations. I do.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can jump in too, I think one of the questions on the fees, I do want to remind council that of the $4, 2 of those are actually going to go away because 2 of those were specifically related to flood recovery, and that's in 3 years from when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 4 3 years.
It was 4 3 years, and so it's 2016 when that is slated to go away. And I can assure you, Councilmember Levison, that we are holding to that as we look at these numbers.
Councilmember Christensen?
Okay, well, to give you more information about consensus, I agree that I favor what you've suggested for employee compensation. I agree with several members that this is not a very good time for that sales tax, and I thank you for giving us the comparison with other cities around here, because it makes it very difficult for our businesses when people are buying. People, whether it's a business or an individual, they do take into account, particularly for large items, how much sales tax there is, and they'll go somewhere else. And so we want our businesses, obviously, to flourish. I was going to ask you something, though, about the budget reset. How have we been doing over the last couple of years with funding that and working it down?
How have we been? How well have we been doing?
Yes, how well have we been doing over the last couple of years?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, we've reduced it about, I think, 600 to 750,000 a year, I believe. We've kind of identified more things to add on top of it at the same time, so it's been kind of going up and down. But we've taken big bites out of it the last couple of budgets.
Okay. The other thing I noticed is the infrastructure, the public building infrastructure. That's really, it's alarming. When you hear post-tension slab repair for this building, in other words, this could collapse if we don't do something. That's the way it sounds. So I don't think we need to worry about redecorating or rehabilitating council chambers. We need to worry about the foundation underneath the whole building, and we have to figure out a way to.
So on that note, what we can say is part of that cost is actually coming in and doing additional investigation on it.
Okay.
So just to let council know, what we heard is a loud pop. We're not sure if it's the line going this way, the line going this way, but we have been assured by the structural engineers that at this point it's not an unsafe building. So I do want to say that. I think we need to be pretty clear, and so part of that is doing the investigation as we continue moving forward. Our building maintenance staff has not said to us at this point, be careful with the building. Now, if they were to come in that investigation and say that, we would obviously come to you all and tell you immediately, but right now we're okay. What we're trying to identify in this is that we know, just like we talked about with the park infrastructure and some of the other areas, that there are dollars that we need to invest in our infrastructure beyond in our buildings to make sure that we can extend the life expectancy of those buildings, and we're not caught having to look at, we need to rebuild it. So I just wanted to jump in real quick on that one.
Councilmember Young?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Employee compensation is definitely high on my list. The comments I get from 99.9% of the people I talk to out in the community are, when they have an interaction with a city employee, it's a positive outcome. So I think that's a measurement, a metric we can use to definitely support that type of an approach. I also like the idea of being able to get our public improvement fund going again. Your plan appears to be something that I would support. What I am not hearing, though, is we've gone through this priority-based budgeting. And have we identified any programs or services we are doing that could be done by someone else so we wouldn't have to pay for it anymore and improve our position in the general fund? That's something I haven't heard anything about for a while. Those level 4 budget items that maybe we shouldn't be doing it, and we should be looking for ways to actually reduce our budget and allow our revenues to catch up with our budget, rather than try to figure out a way to catch our revenues up with our budget. And so that's just another suggestion I'd like to throw out on the table. And I know that since you're in the middle of all this, you've still got a lot of unanswered questions, so I won't grill you too hard tonight, but you can expect it coming forward.
Well, and I think on the priority-based budgeting system, we also remember that council said during the affordable housing conversation that you did want us to look at some of those and bring you back some different options. So definitely as we move through the process, that is going to be something we look at. Frankly, as we look at the allocation or the request in the level 2s and the level 1s, it's something that came along with those budget requests is where are they ranked. And so that is definitely something as we prepare the budget that will be included in it. So it is there. The other thing I wanted to say is that we also know that we have a lot of unfunded capital projects that have been on the books for years. And we've had a conversation of at what point do we just say, when we look at the overall needs, is this really ever something we're going to get to? Because I think to a certain extent that's that reality check in the budget piece that we're going to have to talk about, because what we don't want to do and what I don't want to do is provide some false sense of expectations that something was going to be built. When in reality, when we look at all the other needs, it's highly unlikely that that's going to occur. So those are some of the things that we will be talking about as we bring you these budgets. And then ultimately it's council's decision as you say, yes, we need to leave it or no, we don't. But those are some things that we're going to be talking to you all about.
Councilmember Levison.
One point that I would like to make, since you did bring up Kensington Park in your presentation, Jim, that we do have to fulfill our commitment to the community when I know as part of, that was the first one of the neighborhood revitalization projects that community came together and they helped develop a revitalization plan for the park. We cannot say because we haven't funded things that were a community-based initiative 10 years ago or 15 years ago that we're not going to follow up on those commitments, just as we've talked many years with the west side of Longmont with recreation facilities on the west side that have been requested over and over again. You know, before we look at doing a huge finish off of Quail Campus, we need to start balancing and addressing needs where we've had these massively participatory public engagement events and people's expectations are raised. They understand there's a long timeline, but to just cross things off, I think, is something we do have to be careful that we don't say, well, we want the new bright, shiny penny and not, that's how, you know, continue with our improvements. That's how we fell behind on, you know, small neighborhood park playground rehabilitations, because year after year, the budget, it was always unfunded. And now we're in this situation where we have to pay attention and it's going to cost us quite a bit more money. So I want to make sure before we grab for that shiny new penny that we're polishing up the pennies in our pocket.
Okay, I think we've beat this to death tonight. I think you got your general direction.
Thank you.
We all agree pretty much with your direction. Thank you, Jim.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is board and commission appointments. And you had just recently, I think a week ago, completed your interview process for the boards. So we'll go through these fairly quickly, hopefully. You have ballots in front of you for Art and Public Places. There are 5 members that need to be appointed. They all have the same in terms, so if you vote for 5, that would be great.
Thank you.
Art and Public Places, vote for 5.
Start filling out, Mayor.
I'm done. I've already, mine are all pre-filled out.
All right.
Okay, Councilmember Finley voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, and Emily Patterson. Councilmember Levison voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Amy Mann, Emily Patterson, and Suzanne Zenz. Councilmember Moore voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, and Emily Patterson. Councilmember Bagley voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, and Emily Patterson. I hope someone else is counting these as well. Yeah. Mayor Coombs voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, and Emily Patterson. I know. Christensen, Councilmember Christensen voted for Karen Henson, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, Emily Patterson, and Suzanne Zenz. In Councilmember Santos voted for Karen Henson, Brenda Isaac, Aubrey Jacobs, Amy Mann, and Emily Patterson. So, 2, 4. Everybody was appointed except for Suzanne Zenz. She received the fewest votes. Okay. Board of Adjustment and Appeals, you have 1 applicant and 1 regular position ending 2018.
Councilmember Santos.
Mayor, I move that we appoint Thomas Duber to the Board of Justice.
I'll second that. All in favor? Just raise your hand. Okay, that's done.
Board of Environmental Affairs, I just want to let you know that we did receive a resignation from Aaron Grebe, so we need to appoint for that position as well. So we'll have 3 regular member terms, 1 unexpired ending 2/17 and 1 unexpired ending in 2/16. So I don't know whether you've already voted ballots, but if you're voting for 5, we'll have to make motions on who gets which term. So
right. Okay.
Do you want to vote for 5 or do you want to vote for 3 for the regular terms first?
Councilmember, or what do you think? Or
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to, well, first of all, Matt Dabney is on here, and he applied for 2 boards, right?
Correct.
And so, me personally, I would like, I mean, it's up to you guys, but I wouldn't mind actually voting on the Master Board of Appeals, because I know that a couple council members had some concerns about this.
Okay,
And
first,
so,
see if he's even still eligible for this one. Okay.
And then,
Does that work for everybody else?
I guess that's a motion.
Yeah. Okay, I'll second that motion. Okay. Councilmember Lawson?
Yes, I do not know if he has the relevant, there's some kind of requirement for that board, and I wanted to know from the city attorney if someone with a physics degree got enough of the background to be able to qualify for that.
Use the other one. I don't know what's wrong with that.
Do karaoke.
Mayor and Council, I'm looking at the ordinance for Nestor Board of Appeals, and it says board members shall be architects, engineers, licensed building contractors, or persons qualified by training or experience to determine the suitability of alternative materials, methods of construction, and to consider requests for interpretation of city buildings codes and other technical codes. So I didn't see the application, so I can't help you on that.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coons. Wasn't his job, though, wasn't he a rocket scientist? Wasn't he an engineer?
No, he works for him. He does optics. He does infrared optics. It's different.
It's different.
Rocket science is not construction science.
No, I know it's not rocket science, it's not construction science, but my point is that there's a lot of things I didn't know how to do that if you're even, and the guy's way smarter than me, and I think I could figure it out.
Well, how can you do brain surgery on you if you feel he's qualified?
How the comment was that how her husband could do brain surgery on me if I feel that he's qualified. Well, I just want to point out that he killed Pluto, but Pluto's back, baby.
Well,
I guess we should vote.
What are we voting on?
Whether Matthew Dabney is going to be appointed to the Master Board of Appeals.
I contend that he's not eligible for the appointment because of the background and what we saw in the resume. So I don't think he's eligible according to what the city attorney just read.
I guess I agree from what I just heard Eugene say. So I don't think we can, as much as I like them, and I think he'd probably do a good job, but what Eugene just read to me tells me he's probably not eligible. So I think we should. repost it, and go back to voting for Councilmember.
Point of order. We have a motion and a second. Are
Well,
we withdrawing?
the motion in the second I thought was to consider Master Board of Appeals first,
Right,
not
yes.
to.
Right.
Are you guys going to go away with that?
Yeah, I'm going to go away. Okay.
I don't have the votes.
Second.
I must rescind.
Yeah.
Master Board of
Board of Environmental Affairs.
So we're not voting, we're reopening Master Board of Appeals.
Are we going to vote for 5?
Well, Mayor, I think that needs to be clarified before you pick up those ballots, so I think.
Yeah, let's put the ballots back so we all understand. So if we all vote for 5, and then the ones that get the least vote, can they get?
Well, you can do it two ways. You could vote for 5, and if you get 3 that have a significant number of votes, those would get the regular terms, and then you can make motions on the others, or we can just keep revoting until we run through the whole cycle.
Okay.
Let's go with let's just do whoever gets the most gets the regular terms.
Okay, vote for 5 then.
Yeah, let's
Vote for 5. Okay. And then, Valerie, did you get enough direction that we would want to repost the, okay.
I'll do it. I'll apply. I'm roughly do, but Master Board of Appeals sounds fine. Why don't you do it, Joe? A 9-year-old would probably like that. You do it like a. No, but he knows Pluto's a planet. They're qualified in hell.
Pluto's back, baby.
Okay. We'll mix these up so they come in different order this time. Okay. Mayor Coombs voted for Brian Copeman, Matthew Dabney, Jessica Henley, James Kenworthy, and Joe Parker. Councilmember Leverson voted for Donna, Brian, Jessica, James, and Joe. I'm doing this slowly so I don't mess it up. Sorry. Councilmember Finley voted for Donna, Brian, Matthew, James, and Joe. Councilmember Santos voted for Timothy, Donna. Is that a vote for Matthew? No. Okay. It was
Yes.
just sort of a semi-mark.
Yes, the
Okay.
other one's a scratch out.
Okay. Matthew.
Sorry.
All right. Jessica and Joe. Councilmember Moore voted for Timothy, Brian, Jessica, James, and Joe. Councilmember Bagley voted for Timothy, Brian, Matthew, Jessica, and James. And Councilmember Christensen voted for Donna, Brian, Jessica, James, and Joe. Okay, so if I calculated this right, let me count this. 6. We have 4 people that got 6 votes.
Yeah.
Okay, but we only have 3 regular board member terms. So the 4 are Brian Cotman, Jessica Henley, James Kenworthy, and Joe Parker. So you will need to take a vote on those 4.
Can't we just vote for the one who gets the least? Let's just
Mayor.
go vote for
Mayor.
one, and that guy's gonna get the.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So Donna and Matthew got 4 votes each.
Correct.
So let's do the low-hanging fruit. So can we vote on who's going to get the unexpired terms and deal at least one of the unexpired terms? And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 5 positions, and we have too many votes for. We have 6. Brian, Jessica, James, and Joe each have 6, correct?
Right. You have 4 that have 6 and 2 that have 4.
Exactly.
So you have a total of 6 that have the majority of votes.
Let's vote on between Donna and Matt, who's going to get the...
The one of the unexpired.
Let's vote for of the 4 that got the most votes. Let's vote for 3 people to get the regular members settled, and then vote again for the 2 unexpired, because it's really not fair for somebody who got more votes than somebody else to be able to be eliminated.
No, I wasn't suggesting we eliminate them. Just go ahead and eliminate the 2 that have 4.
So eliminate one of the 2 that have 4.
Correct.
Is what he's saying. And because the 1 unexpired term is 16, 1 is 17. So eliminate one of the 2 lower vote getters, and they get the 16 term, is what you're saying.
Lose, they would not be on the board.
Correct.
But of the 4 that got the highest vote,
still have
3
to
of them will
decide that.
become regular, and 1 of them will become a
2017
unexpired.
term member.
Okay.
So I guess Mayor, if I may, I guess my suggestion is that we vote for the unexpired 2014.
16.
It says 14 on here, but I know that's wrong. So 116 and 117?
Yeah, 116, 117. 14 was last year.
Okay,
Or
right.
this year.
So let's vote for the unexpired. Let's do between Donna and Matthew, if I may make a suggestion. Between Donna and Matthew, the one that expires for 16.
Correct. That would make sense.
And then whoever does not get that vote is not on the board.
So we are voting for the person we want to serve the unexpired regular member term.
But only between Donna and Matthew.
Correct.
And 1 vote.
A vote means they're on.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Trying to eliminate one person.
I blame Jim Golden.
Right.
That's nice.
Okay. Let's see if people can follow instructions here. Councilmember Moore voted for Matthew. Councilmember Levison voted for Donna. Councilmember Bagley voted for Matthew. Mayor Coombs voted for Matthew. Councilmember Santos voted for Matthew. Councilmember Finley voted for Matthew, and Councilmember Christensen voted for Donna. So Matthew Dabney will get the 2016 expiration term. And so now we need to, what do you want to do, vote for 3 or vote for 1 of those? Vote for 3.
Yeah, let's vote for 3.
Vote for 3, and circle these names so you have Brian, Jessica, James, and Joe. Vote for 3 of those. So if you circle all 4 of them, vote for 3 of them.
Vote for
Joe, and we vote for 3.
Vote for 3 of them.
How did Mayor Coombs get on this list?
Bang. Okay, fine.
Voting at its best. Instantaneous.
Approval.
Google vote.
Okay, Councilmember Christensen voted for, let me get these names, Brian, for James, and for Joe. Councilmember Finley voted for Brian, for James, and for Joe. Councilmember Santos voted for Brian, for Jessica, and for Joe. Councilmember Moore voted for Jessica, James, and Joe. Councilmember Levison voted for Brian, for Jessica, and for James. Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, demoted.
Oh, how about Mayor Coombs? Sorry. Voted for Brian and Jessica and James. And Councilmember Bagley voted for Brian, I know, but I have to read it, Jessica and James. So, Brian and Jessica and James will get the regular member terms, And Joe Parker will get the unexpired regular member ending 2017. Okay, that work?
Yep.
Great. Okay, Cable Trust, no application, so we'll re-advertise that one. Downtown Development Authority, we have one unexpired term, regular member. You have 3, so vote for one.
Pretty confident there, but go for it, Councilman.
I get to vote.
Who haven't we started with? Councilmember Moore voted for Chris. Christensen voted for Chris. Levison voted for Chris. Bagley voted for Chris. Finley voted for Chris. Santos voted for Chris. And Coombs voted for Chris. Looks like a unanimous. Chris McGilvery. Downtown Development Authority. General Employee Retirement Pension Board, you have 1 vacancy, 1 applicant. General Employee Retirement Pension Board.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Gordon Pedro.
Second.
Third, okay. All in favor? All right.
Thank you. Library Advisory Board, you have 1 applicant, 1 position, because one of the applicants withdrew their application.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Deanna.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Okay. Longmont Housing Authority, again, 1 applicant, 1 position.
I'll let go ahead. You can make the motion.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move that we appoint Josh Canvasser to the Longmont Housing Authority Board.
All right. All in favor?
Okay. We are reopening the Master Board of Appeals. The MOPC Board, we have 1 applicant, 1 position.
Mayor.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move we appoint Brian Bagley. I move we appoint Greg Wagner to the MOPAC.
Second.
Okay. No applicants from Museum Advisory Board. We have 3 positions, so we'll re-advertise that one.
That is sad.
Transportation Advisory Board, we have 3 positions, 2 applicants.
Councilmember Santos.
No, I'm not in. She beat me to the punch.
Okay. Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we appoint Michael Jarvis and Robert Lee to 2 of the 3 regular terms on Transportation Advisory.
All right, I'll second that. All in favor?
And then re-advertise.
Okay.
And we will re-advertise that other vacancy. Water Board, we have 1 position and 4 applicants. Tom Aaron has withdrawn his application, so if he shows up on your ballot, take him off.
Yeah, it's not on the ballot. Speeds things up. I'm going to appoint Brian Bagley.
Don't tell me.
You're already down.
Where'd you go?
Put on me down. Good board.
They're all good boards, Councilmember Santos.
Councilmember Bagley voted for John Caldwell. Mayor Coombs voted for John Caldwell. Councilmember Christensen voted for John Caldwell. Councilmember Moore voted for Don McAllister. Councilmember Levison voted for John Caldwell. Councilmember Finley voted for John Caldwell, and Councilmember Santos voted for John Caldwell. And that would be it. Thank you very much.
Second. Councilmember Levison?
Thank you, Mayor. Valerie, one thing that we did have a brief part of a conversation with the person we appointed to Water Board is that it's a board of 5 and there are no alternates. So can we, if council would, I guess I'll move that we suggest to Water Board and get their stamp of approval and go ahead and simultaneously create an alternate position for Water Board. Can we?
Well, most of our alternates are included in your ordinance, so we probably have to bring an ordinance back creating that position, but.
So I guess I would move that we direct staff to bring an ordinance to create an alternate position for the Water Board, and then we would like to perhaps take a look at re-advertising and appointing somebody, because we want to keep some information going in that pipeline, have people on the bench.
So you said included in that motion, re-advertise after we create it, or? Okay.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. I'm not going to second that. When we talked to John Caldwell on that afternoon, it was suggested that the Water Board discuss, because it's a 5-year term, to discuss whether we need potentially 2 alternates or 2 additional regular members. I would rather have the recommendation from the Water Board about what they're, along with staff, about what they see and what they need. Having been on the Water Board, there was always great participation, sometimes a little close to not having a quorum, so potentially 2 other members would be great, but I'd rather get the recommendation from the Water Board first before we start acting on an ordinance.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense to me that they should be the one driving the bus. I mean, I'm the liaison to Water Board, and since I've been there, they've always had a quorum. But I do agree it might be kind of nice for someone to, get a seat on the bench there to find out what Water Board does. So it's quite an educational process. Water law is different than any other kind of law you've ever imagined.
And Mayor Coombs and Council, one of the reasons for having alternates, it's not just because of quorum issues, but sometimes when there's a lot of technicalities involved with the board, having an alternate that can step in that is already up to speed.
Right, yes.
I believe that's why Planning Commission originally put alternates on.
Right, yeah.
So we can certainly take that back to Water Board and come back with a recommendation for you.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask Water Board to evaluate that and see if they think that they need it, and then they can come back to us. Then we can rewrite the ordinance, I think. Okay.
Do I see 4 heads? I need 4 heads.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bagley.
Bagley, Brian.
My brain's fried.
That's all right. That's all right, Mayor. I guess the whole thing that kind of kicked off the thought of, hey, maybe we should do an alternate, or hey, maybe we need one more board member, was because Shannon Bonjour knocked it out of the park. And so if John Caldwell if he wasn't so awesome, having served like 1,000 years on City Council and the Water Board combined, Shannon Bonjour would have been appointed immediately. And so I think that the spirit of, once you find the right person, you hire them. And so I know that we're going to go back to the Water Board and say, hey, do you want us to increase it? But it would be a shame if we didn't take action to basically somehow link Shannon or Ms. Bonjour with what we're doing here tonight. Because I don't want her to, get the impression, oh, we're going to repost, or oh, not you. It's her. That's what we want. And so we need to respect what the board wants and what their suggestion is. But I think that, I guess I'd move that we specifically ask, in conjunction with the last motion, we ask the Water Board that they come up with a way for Shannon Bonjour to be the person that they find a way for her to participate, to gain that technical experience, and also serve in a capacity that would allow her to step up in the event that a quorum is not present. That's a motion.
Yeah. All right, I guess I'll second that, but we can't. Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. Actually, when I made the first motion that didn't get the second, it was to simultaneously direct staff to draft an ordinance so that, the Water Board could take a look at an ordinance that we that we would want them to consider, giving us advice on, so that we don't have to keep going back and forth. And I do agree that really the impetus for this was, number one, to have some depth on the water board, and the fact that we had somebody extraordinary. And I think that if we would follow the regular procedure and post for the alternate to direct staff that, Ms. Bonjour was somebody that we would like to see put her name in again, or we could just direct staff to put her name in the running with her approval. So I think I don't want to wait on this. I see by going to the water board, I don't know when the next water board meeting is, getting that on their agenda, and then having it come back to us a month later. I'd like to have it done quicker than that. That's why I suggested a simultaneous stream.
So, Councilmember Santos.
Thank you. It's almost 10:30 and we're potentially making bad policy. I would agree that getting a potential another 1 or 2 board members up to speed, it would be good. I don't believe that we should single out, although she was a very good candidate, and had there been 2 regular members, I would have voted for her as well. However, we do not have a process in place to add another person, or even wink, 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 you're on the board. That's not
wink, 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 wink.
No, sorry, Councilmember Bagley, and as a lawyer, you would know better. You should know better. The correct way of going about this is, again, going through water board, getting a recommendation from them. It may take a month, and as we have done before, when we've been in this situation, we have asked for the clerk's office to bring us back the other candidates who did not make it this round, bring it back to council, and we can make a decision at that time. That giving a wink, then what about Donald McAllister or David Paternitini? It would not be fair to them as well.
Right.
Doesn't matter. They made it. We have voted for people that didn't show up to their interview before.
Yeah.
But not now.
We cannot specify for one board, and making that wink and trying to expedite this, it's not good.
I guess I'm in total agreement with Councilmember Santos. I think we're trying to rush form fit something. I mean, as much as I like Shannon, she might still be available if we do go through this thing. And first off, I really like Water Board to tell us that they really want and need an alternate. And then we do the process, and if hopefully, we get Shannon plus maybe a couple more people to consider, and we'll consider it at that point. I think that's the best way to do it.
There's a motion on the floor with a second.
Yep. No. Well, you made the motion.
You made the motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. So, okay, I'll withdraw in a second then. All right. So now we're clear, we're done.
No one's fried.
Although, Councilmember Becker.
So do we have no direction now at all to Water Board? That should we?
No, we're telling Water Board.
I believe we have direction for Water Board.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
That's just want to make sure.
I move that we direct staff to invite Shannon Bonjour to apply again.
I'll second that.
Wink.
Yes. Wink, wink. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I guess it's not 11 o'clock yet, but it's time for. Any comments?
Final call.
Oh, well, we got to do final call. Public invited heard. Anybody from the public like to speak yet? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close final call. Public invited heard. So now it's time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Several items actually tonight. I got 2 emails regarding the Roosevelt Park meeting that apparently the residents felt that as I said earlier, overtaken about what we can do about the homeless instead of addressing the issues that were at the park. So I did see an email that had rave reviews about the meeting. I was not there. Then on Friday or Saturday, I had a gentleman call and leave me a voicemail about Lanyon Park. Apparently they're having the issues there. You may have all talked to him. And he also mentioned that we do not have a ordinance regarding public drunkenness. Perhaps we should look at that. I'm not making any motions, but I believe that it doesn't focus just on those without homes, but potentially others that come out of a establishment and cause all kind of issues. It's potentially if there's it's something that I would like to hear from the city attorney about eventually later on down the line about an ordinance regarding public drunkenness. I hope that we potentially have another meeting regarding Roosevelt Park and what's going on potentially about what's going on at Lanyon Park. Do we need to up patrols? Garden Acres, they have issues with vandals. Now, it's my understanding that we have at Roosevelt other patrols going by there, but apparently it's not enough. So I would like to see something done about it. Two members of the public were talking about RTD. I read their article in the paper, their op-ed, which I found interesting that the city council was doing nothing but sitting back. I can't think of a council that I've been on since I've been elected to council that hasn't been fighting RTD regarding fast tracks and commuter rail to Longmont. We have asked to be moved from one corridor to another corridor. We've been asked to try to find other funding sources. And some of what they said, we've all been saying from this dais since I've been on council, and fast tracks said we weren't getting it. I remember the 2007 retreat, Councilmember Wilson and Councilmember Blue getting into a little bit of a spat that it wasn't coming to Longmont. Well, it's looking like Councilmember Wilson was correct. It may not be coming to Longmont, but I, for one of seven, has continued to fight RTD. It's unfortunate that those two individuals also back our RTD representative, who apparently has drunk the RTD Kool-Aid and has said we're not getting rail to Longmont. Longmont has also fought to get the BRT. It is in the ballot language regarding enhanced bus services. So we are getting something, but is it exactly what we want? No, hell no. We all want commuter rail coming to this community, whether they go up I-25 or go through Boulder. And we're going to, as one of seven, I'm going to hold them to that. They need to build it and build it as soon as possible. Finding other funding mechanisms that will get us the commuter rail that residents of Longmont voted for and residents of Longmont deserve. Lastly, I participated in the National League of Cities Hispanic Elected Local Officials board meeting in San Francisco. We discussed a lot about technology, about open data. So as I mentioned to Councilmember Moore earlier, I'll be getting in touch with him. A lot about Nextlight. A lot of municipalities, especially in California, are very interested in municipal broadband. One council member from San Antonio pulled me aside and apparently he's going to be here in several months and would like to discuss Nextlight and how that's working, even though they're getting Google Fiber. I found that fascinating. We also discussed police and community relations, not just about Ferguson or the tragic shooting there, or the one of the officers in New York, but not that any one particular life matters, but all life matters. With that, I mentioned to the board that Chief Mike Butler and former council member Dan Benavides, every Sunday we get those, Mondays we get those emails from Dan about their walks and the belonging revolution in Longmont. I mentioned that there was a lot of interest in that. Perhaps we can send Dan and Mike to the National League of Cities meeting in Nashville to discuss the success that they have had. And so a lot of folks were interested in that. The last thing, I'm not going to talk about homelessness because we already have beat that away. But I found it interesting, we had a water board, a general manager and a water board member present about drought in California and how they would like the federal government to basically take over all water law in the United States. I said, yeah, that's going to be a problem in Colorado. Big problem. But what I found fascinating is that, as you all know, we get our water from the river, it gets processed in Nelson Flanders, gets sent to our homes, we use it, gets sent down to the wastewater treatment plant. We clean it up, and it's actually better than when we received it, and we send it down the line to the next user. California won't allow people to drink recycled or reused water in that sense. So I have little, and I'm not saying toilet to faucet, but I'm talking about having it redone at our wastewater treatment plant where it's so clean and pure that the state of California will not allow residents to drink that water after it's been treated at the wastewater treatment plant. So they have and I confirmed with Dale, they have a major problem with a drought. That's one easy way to fix it. If you can't get water to all those millions of people in California, we can help them about what we do in Colorado, but until they're willing to drink water that may have been repurposed before, it doesn't taste that bad.
But Longmont doesn't have any water's ever been flushed before we get it.
But it comes from other sources.
Councilmember Levison.
I have several things. Today is July 14th. It's Bastille Day. And if my grandmother was still alive, it would be her 109th birthday, and she passed just shy of 100. So it's a great joy in our family to have July 14th. And also, today marked a very historic space mission, New Horizons, that has many folks who worked on the project that are living in Longmont, and Southwest Research Institute, where my husband is working, not on this project, but they were the lead institution, and I was absolutely privileged to see the launch of New Horizons on January 19, 2006, and we've all been waiting a very long time. Pluto is still not a planet. It is a dwarf planet. It does not diminish at all the scientific and engineering accomplishment of so many people, from everyone at Southwest Research to Ball Aerospace to University of Colorado, who had undergraduates and graduate students working on instruments that went up, to the facility at Johns Hopkins, where they're doing mission control right now. And I think it's just an extraordinary milestone to know that we who are on this planet took something and made it about the size of a grand piano and sent it way out there, where every picture they take takes 4.5 hours to get back to us. It's just, it's very much mind expanding, and I think that we should congratulate not just state of Colorado with all the initiatives we had in hand in it, but the entire nation to have this kind of research and development and scientific and engineering expertise to accomplish this great mission. So I think we're all looking forward to seeing what's out there. And I also want to, people I think may have read the articles, but the person who just discovered Pluto, Clyde Tombaugh, some of his ashes are on the New Horizon, and I think that that's very exciting for his family, and also for Lowell Observatory, where he discovered Pluto in the 1930s. So congratulations to everybody all around.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Have a couple of things. I did go to the meeting for Roosevelt Park. I thought it was done very well. They explained exactly what they've been doing. They have, for the last 3 months, they've had a street outreach team, the police department, that have been doing great work over there. As a result of that, some of those people are no longer homeless. They have homes now, and they've been helped. And all the things that were discussed, it was very, very informative, and I think we should have more of those meetings. I also wanted to talk about my business of the week. We're going to talk about magic fairy candles. I think you all could use some magic fairy candles here tonight. Would calm your nerves, maybe help center you. The address is 634 Main Street, another great business on Main Street. Go check out the Magic Fairy Candles. They're soy-based, don't have any icky stuff in them. So you can use them in your homes. And I think I'll be done.
They have great soap, too. No fairies are injured if they're making them.
Okay, city manager, any comments?
Mayor, Council, I did want to say that in talking to Carmen, there is another meeting that's going to be scheduled. They took some input based on the meeting at Roosevelt. I would also like to say that in addition to the outreach group, it is in the problem. That area is in on the problem-oriented policing side. We also have work that's being done by both Michelle and Jeff, and working with the RTD folks. What I think they communicated in the meeting, but a lot of people don't know, is we've asked our fire department to actually go around the area as they're leaving and coming in for calls. So that's another piece. We're also in the process of creating a training program for our fire department in terms of how to deal with mental health issues and interact, and we're going to be talking to them about moving through the park. That was one of the issues why we didn't move quickly, because they didn't have the training, so those are pieces that we're working on. In addition, we're also, as we've had discussions internally about the different issues that we're encountering as a community, we've also found that we're all dealing with those in different ways and engaging at different levels in the organization. So we're bringing a group together to start tying that in, so that we're creating a seamless interaction within the organization. So those are things they probably talked about, but I wanted to go ahead and add those to the conversation because it is something that is at the forefront of staff's mind, and it is something we're working on.
Thank you. City Attorney, any comments?
No comment. Mayor and Council, I did send you an email scheduling my performance review for July 28th. I've just noticed that there's a conflict with the groundbreaking for the Heron Lake Channel project, so I will work on rescheduling that, my performance review.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.